Good morning once again, and welcome to Radio Westchester. I can say that. Good morning once again. Indeed, it is 6:20. It's 34 degrees. I'm going to get my volume up here so I can hear what I'm saying. Good morning. It's 34 degrees on this Friday, January 10th, 2020. We've got some broken clouds. We're going to get up to 48 today. We'll be back with that weather in just a moment, but let's take a look at our local headlines. The man accused in the Hanukkah attack in Muncie is facing 10 new federal charges. A gunman is sentenced to 25 years to life in the murder of a Yonkers man. Will educators be heard as regions consider new high school graduation requirements? We didn't know they weren't involved. A driver was killed in a two-car crash near the Palisades Center. And we won a little debate with someone who was pretty bright the other day. Boeing and that Boeing airliner in the Ukraine, or rather in Iran, that took off, there was no problem with the plane. It was shot out of the sky by Iran's own defense system. As we move forward, welcome. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the train station. I keep doing that. The radio station at the train station. Welcome to the program once again. And as you know, it is time for us to share with you the weather. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. It is 34 degrees, going to get up to 48 today. It'll be mostly cloudy, mainly dry, but there could be an isolated shower in a few spots, especially north and west of New Rochelle. Warmer later, though, with highs around 49 again. Now, tonight, mainly cloudy with some fog and a chance of a few spotty showers, lows around 44. And looking at tomorrow, a gloomy day, the weather report says. Cloudy with an early morning shower possible. Most of the midday hours, though, are dry with clouds and some fog. Record warmth likely. Yes, record warmth here. It says highs around 60. And the previous high on this date for history was in 1975. It was 57. So we will make history tomorrow. And it'll be a little breezy, 10 to 20 miles per hour. Tomorrow night, cloudy with steady rain showers, warm with lows around 55 tomorrow night. Sunday, extreme January warmth. Highs now around 66 degrees. The last time they said 65. Now it's 66. We're going to push for 70. Now the record... and this is for tomorrow now, rather Sunday, excuse me. The record there goes all the way back to 1885. It was 60. Now, once again, though, keep in mind, early rain showers, though, on Sunday give way to breaks of afternoon sunshine. The weather will be more typical of early May. Winds out of the southwest, 15 to 25 miles an hour. And Sunday night, as you're getting ready to go to work, things will chill a bit, mostly cloudy, getting down to 39 degrees. And once again, the weather was brought to you by our friends at the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit UHGC.com. The top of the hour brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, who will bring you Jake's Picks of the Week. You won't want to miss that at 8 o'clock. And plug in virtual reality. And let's get to our stories of the day. And we will do that now. We're going to take a national story, an international story, and put it at the top of the queue. Now, this came out of Iran and the Ukraine yesterday, but it was best articulated by the Prime Minister of Canada. And he said, and we quote, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said yesterday, evidence indicates that the Iranian missile downed the Ukrainian jetliner late Tuesday and that the strike was likely unintentional. Trudeau says Canadian, and they lost the most people on this flight. That's why they've been speaking a lot about it. Trudeau says Canadian and allied intelligence supports that conclusion. He declined to get into the specific intelligence, but said it appeared it was surface-to-air missiles that struck the plane. Now, there has been film of this. Many of you may have seen it on TV. If you haven't, it certainly will be on YouTube and other outlets. But again, apparently what happened here, now let me back up. 63 Canadians, again, is why the Canadians are so involved in it, and mostly from the same community in Canada. So it's a kind of a sad story in that context. But evidently, the way the air defense systems were set up in Iran at the height of this crisis, one of the missiles inadvertently targeted this airliner and took it out. And the other reason we say that is in all deference to Boeing. The other day, in talking to one of our national security experts, he had mentioned, with good intention, of course, and his analysis at the time, that it would be a bad day for Boeing. And we said that plane, now we're talking about the 737-800, they don't fall out of the sky. Those things are as reliable as Toyotas, for God's sakes. They just don't, and particularly on takeoff. But again, with the caveat that in many Asian carriers in South America, Africa, and some other areas where they don't have the training, or more importantly, the economic wherewithal to do the kind of maintenance and follow the kind of rigor that the FAA requires in this country, I drop that and I say, with this one caveat, or this caveat that applies to those countries, the planes aren't quite as safe when flown by those people. Pilots trained in simulators for less numbers of hours, paid less, worked harder, and again, less rigor for their planes. So when an American airliner falls out of the sky, that should, for that reason, get your attention. Still no less a tragedy here. The plane shot out of the sky now by the Iranians themselves. And indeed, there had been some question because when a plane does go down, the NTSB in this country and various other aeronautical safety organizations in certain countries, in respective countries, they go on the scene, as does the manufacturer. Now, given the heightened tensions between the United States and Iran, there was some question as to whether or not Boeing would be allowed in. But since they're the manufacturer of the aircraft, they are in a position to analyze what caused the crash. Now, two things. An original review of the crash definitely saw shrapnel, etc., indicative of a missile attack. But one of the things that the Iranians did do, and this is unfortunate, absolutely unfortunate, and I guess an attempt by them to say it wasn't our fault, is they've already cleaned up the crash site. That's unheard of until the investigators get there. But the information now is so prima facie, as they say, so much available on the face, that clearly they shot it down themselves. But the question is, wow, what about your missile defense systems? Purchased, by the way, from Russia. It is, let me double check the time. We keep moving things around here. I look for the clock all over. 6:28, 34 degrees, on its way to 48 today. We're going to have a cloudy day, but the real news tomorrow is it gets up to 60 and Sunday 65. They won't be beautiful days. It won't be sunny and balmy. But nonetheless, let us get back now and look at the local news as we enter 628. The man accused in the Hanukkah attack in Muncie is facing new federal hate crime charges this morning. Police say Grafton Thomas injured 5 people with a machete during a Hanukkah celebration at a rabbi's house. As you mostly all know by now, officials say Grafton Thomas now faces a total of 10 federal hate crime charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office says Thomas targeted the group because of their religion. Well, prosecutors say they found handwritten journal entries in Grafton's home with anti-Semitic Semitic sentiments, as well as searches on his phone for local temples. Now, he has pleaded not guilty. He's being held without bail. And one of the issues that clearly is obvious, or at least ought to be by now, and this does not take away any of the concerns we all have for anti-Semitism. The man pretty clearly mentally ill, or at least that is what we are being told in the press and by Mr. Sussman, his attorney. In fact, we're going to ask a little bit about Mr. Sussman. He's done 4 interviews with our friends at Black Westchester Magazine. We'll be talking with their publisher at 9 o'clock today, right here on Radio Westchester at 629. The gunman who shot a Yonkers man in front of a Bronx school has been sentenced to prison. This in News 12 today. Back in 2014, prosecutors said when Dwayne Reed, not the drugstore, folks, rented a U-Haul to Lamont Smith to move machinery for his business. That's when Reed of Larchmont shot Smith in the back of the head and took off. What prompted the shooting is still a mystery, but there was no motive. There was nothing, said defense attorney Troy A. Smith. Reed was sentenced to 25 years to life in the second degree and 10 years on criminal possession of a weapon. I hope they don't, and they are not served concurrently, because for those of you of a certain age, and I know you're going to concur with this, for those of us that are, let's say, over 60, 25 years is a blink of an eye. You take someone's life, unless there were really mitigating circumstances, they shouldn't let you out. Sorry. Since that was permanent, your issue as well ought to be permanent. That, again, that is notwithstanding, there are some issues that are manslaughter, a result of a fight, blah, 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 things like that. The courts and legislators rather can do a better job of delineating those. But nonetheless, 25 years ain't nothing. It is 6:31. Excuse me. The State Board of Regents, we get to education again. The State Board of Regents is looking hard at what could be New York's most important educational overhaul in decades. The creation of new, possibly multiple ways to earn a high school diploma beyond passing their namesake Regents exams. Why don't they go to New York City? All you got to do is, well, not even show up, register for school in that godforsaken pit of education that is known as New York City. This in Low HUD today. The board, which makes statewide education policy, is hoping to wind up with several ways to measure student knowledge, skills, and readiness to graduate. It has opened a 2-year review of the possibilities, but concerns are surfacing among educational leaders that the regents may undermine their prize project of rushing and outsourcing a key early undertaking, which is assessing what educators across the state would like to see happen. Boy, I can't wait for this. No tests. Don't worry if you don't show up. If you can write your name, they're going to graduate you in New York City. Now, of course, this is hyperbole, folks. It's a little bit of satire, even when I make fun of them. The far left is killing your school system. Deal with them. Please deal with them. Get them to be, they're well-intended. Stupid people have a right not to be stupid, I guess, or people who don't want to try hard or to be helped. We agree with that. And if someone needs more tutoring, they should get more tutoring and more help. If they're violent, they should be segregated from the other kids. And if they can't pass certain tests, they shouldn't move on to the next level. But my words fall on deaf ears. Education is also an industry, and their union could tell you a lot more about that. All righty, this out of West Nyack this morning. One person died in a two-car crash near the entrance to the Palisade Center Mall Thursday afternoon. This in Clarkstown. The Palisade Center Drive near Snake Hill Road and BJ's, the main entrance to the mall's parking, was closed on Thursday afternoon while police investigated the crash car at about 1 p.m. Again, the driver we don't know who he is, no name about his identity. The cause of the crash and death is undetermined at this time. Yesterday, from our man in White Plains, we heard about and also had previously read about the closing of Doral Arrowwood. And this now in Low HUD, the closure will be an economic blow, and some say a safety concern. And they're calling the shutdown of the conference center a sudden economic blow. Local officials are concerned. In a joint letter to Judge Gretchen Walsh on Monday, officials detailed how closing the Arrowwood and Rybrook would create holes in municipalities' budgets and hurt the quality of life for constituents. Now, just a comment about this. If they can go out, and who's they, by the way, because this is a private business, if you can go out and get someone, a sucker maybe, or someone who's really a good businessman or woman, to take this place over and make it work, that's all well and good. But governments, while they're concerned about these things, they need to be more concerned about their tax structure and need to be more concerned about how land use and everything else, how the law and the way they manage their municipalities affect these things, than say this is, we're going to lose money. Well, do you want someone to come in and lose money on purpose? Capitalism means that if Doral can't make it, they should close. What can government do about it? You want to turn it into a hotel? Well, why don't you turn it into affordable housing then? Oh, heaven forbid, it's the Doral. We move on. Again, it just bothers me. We saw that here some 10 years ago when there was a Thruway diner closed and people wanted to blame the city. Private business folks, the Doral's losing money. What, they should stay and give money away? This is like what the state does, as what happened to me when the city, rather, of New York says I had to leave squatters in my house for a year and a half and almost go bankrupt. Well, you want them to live there for free? Pay them. You want these employees to have jobs because the Doral can't afford to pay them anymore? Well, then you go and pay them. Don't bring in some sucker and make them on the hook for your problem. Yeah, I'm talking to you, municipal leaders who come on this program and we generally like, but that's your job, to create the environment, not to, well, you get the gist. It is 6:36. 2 Yonkers schools have been awarded a total of $750,000. This is good because they've been talking a lot about fixing up their schools to make improvements to recreational areas that are heavily used by the community. This in Aloha today. The awards for renovations to Yonkers middle schools, the sporting facilities, and Lincoln High School's auditorium is opportune for the district. The $750,000 comes as Yonkers burns through cash to make temporary repairs to keep its crumbling schools functioning. Now, I know you're probably tired of this, killing a dead horse and all that. But do you remember about 8 years ago now, when they misplaced $55 million? Maybe they ought to go looking for that money over in Yonkers. And we always see the stories coming out of Yonkers. And if you live in Yonkers, I'm not picking on you. Every government tries to put lipstick on a pig. But the schools are great. There's no crime. Everything's wonderful. If it's so wonderful, find the $55 million. Just trying to make a little sense. All right, at 6:37, we need to check in before we go to sports and some other stories and open up the telephones. We need to check in with the weather again, and that we will do. Let's look at it now. If you're just joining us, this is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. Now, if you're getting ready to drive and you're saying, how do I listen? You can listen on your phone. You can go to MyTuner Radio and click on or go to the app that says Mornings with Bob Marrone, or you can go to radiowestchester.com. You can go straight to our website at radiowestchester.com or our Facebook page, and it'll give you a million ways to listen. So we are there. We are on iTunes, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, and soon to be on Spotify. By the way, when I look that way, I can get the temperature. I mean, I have a note here, but that's fixed. We need adjusting temperatures. As it changes, it's 34 right now. Going to get up to 48 today, but we're talking about broken clouds. There could be an isolated shower in a few spots, especially north and west of New Rochelle. Warmer with highs around 49 today. We said 48, but now they're adding a digit or two in the deeper analyses. Tonight, mainly cloudy with some fog and a chance for a few spotty showers. Lows around 44. Saturday, we begin a little bit of a heat wave, but it will be gloomy and cloudy with an early morning shower possible. Most of the midday hours are dry with clouds and some fog. Record warmth. Highs around 60 degrees tomorrow. The previous high was 57, and that in 1975. That's when my daughter was born. Wind breezy south, 10 to 20 miles an hour. Saturday night cloudy with steady rain showers, warm with lows around 55 degrees. Sunday, extreme January warmth, highs around 66. Do you know when that record was? It was only 60, and it was in 1885. And by the way, if they say 66, we're going to kiss 70. You know, it's always a little more than the forecast. At least that historically has been the case since I've been reporting on the weather. Now, Saturday night, cloudy with steady rain showers, warm with lows around 55. I went backwards, didn't I? Well, that happens. Sunday night, rather, partly cloudy to mostly clear with lows around 39 degrees as it begins to get chilly again. Now, of course, it will be sunny on Monday. The high will be 48 degrees. And the weather has been brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best. That's the thing about live radio, okay? You mess up, you don't say cut and retape it. So we're going to do it again. The weather is brought to you this morning exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. The bottom of the hour is also brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio. They've got 2 podcasts up there already. The law firm of Pena and Kahn, plug-in virtual reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. And remember, at 8 o'clock this morning, Dominic's Fine Cigars will bring you this week's football picks from Jake. We'll also talk with Steve Callis about the big weekend upcoming with football playoffs. Again, Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road. And I got to get the right music for this. No, that's not the one I want. I'm going to try this. Yes. You know why? Doesn't that sound like the music that they play in the Garden as we get into sports? When the Rangers win a game, well, one of the Rangers made history last night. A defenseman who had a personality problem. He comes from South Jersey, and we kind of travel hockey-wise in those circles. Great player, great talent, and this Ranger coach and team has got his head straightened out. Anyway, Mr. D'Angelo became the first Ranger blue liner since, that's a defenseman, in 1982 with a 3-goal game. A defenseman getting a 3-goal game, folks, is a big deal. And the Rangers won last night. They defeated the local Devils. I like it when we can do 2 stories in one. They defeated the Devils by a score of 6-3. And that's a big deal, this kid getting 3 goals. And let me see if I can catch up with that story. I got the paper. I actually went and got the paper. So this is good. By a score of 6-3. Now, Arturi Panarin, he got three points again. So too did Ryan Strome. So too did Mr. Zibanejad. The Rangers are starting to do something pretty cool. So we'll see where all this goes. Again, they had their new rookie goalie in. And, enough said about the Rangers. The other story coming up, of course, is the playoffs this weekend. And we fully expect Jake already has said he has his pick of the week. It's the Titans. But that's what we know about football. What do you know about Mr. Judge? In the New York Post today, they're saying that this new coach of the Giants is remarkably like Coach Conklin. Who came up with this? What PR guy is coming up with this one? So those are the 2 things that are going on in sports this morning. We'll see what else is in there. But for those of you who wish to join the broadcast, one of the things that you may want to join about is the fact that a prince, a man in line for the English throne, although I don't know that he'll ever get there. He's got an older brother, and he's got a dad in the wings, and the queen is going to seemingly live forever. But they're upset that Markle wants to go back to Canada and live a normal life. And I don't know. To me, having a good love life is a lot more satisfying than being a monarch. Now, the thing about being a monarch, or part of the monarchy, is everything's paid for, but you have a lot of responsibilities. They control your time. They control where you live. They tell you how to limit your opinions, because remember, in the monarchy in the UK, they can't take political sides. It's a wonderful thing. It's like a set of human flags. And it does give people on all sides of their political equation something to focus on that is central, that is the country itself, that is national, as opposed to either left, right, or centrist politics. So we'll follow that. Now, a story, when I saw this earlier when I was reading it, it's one of the reasons I didn't chop up the paper yet. I was a little too upset. Listen to this. This is in the New York Post today, and it comes from Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie. And he says, we have to get out of this idea that bail equates safety. And his headline is, and this is probably why the governor wussed out yesterday. And again, everybody I talked, no, he wussed. Everybody's concerned about this bail issue, okay? And people aren't saying they want to reverse it fully. What they're saying is they want judges to have discretion. But what with the far left running things up in Albany, or at least a group of far left, well, reality's taking a back seat. Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie says he has no intention of modifying New York's controversial criminal justice overhaul, which has enraged prosecutors, police, and some judges by nixing most bail requirement and forcing early production of evidence in cases. Now that we like. We never want that to change. I think I'm ready to let the law continue the way it is, the powerful Bronx Democrat said. We want safe communities, but it is important to have a criminal justice system that treats everybody equally. He added, I didn't hear anybody screaming and yelling or panicking when Harvey Weinstein was able to put in $1 million on bail, walk out of jail. You know, I understand that, Assembly Speaker Heastie, but that could have been solved with a judge. And again, with a judge using, and I'm sure there'd be lots of liberal judges who would do it, using discretion, people who they deemed dangerous, and you do need human judgment. We don't do this by computers. Why don't we just get rid of all judges' input? And we go through this in business. This is where Hastie's being disingenuous and Hastie's being timid. It's like the boss. All those of you on your way to work today know that there are bosses that if they could, they put everything in the computer, because heaven forbid that they have to be a real executive. That's why I've stopped short of certain things the president does, even though I find his presidency troubling. He is the chief executive. He has to make decisions. You won't like them all. The one he made recently, taking out this military leader. I wasn't sure if I agree with it or not for lots of reasons that go into the region's history and the greater dynamic of the Arabs versus the Persians seeking hegemony in the region. I get it. But someone's got to make the decision. The president made it. And always try and respect decisions. That's what we pay them for. Now, Hastie doesn't want the judges to do that. He wants it to be cookie cutter. Well, I am going to get on the record here. The Democrats, locally, statewide, are making the same mistake, and in some ways more egregiously than the Tea Party did 6, 7, 8 years ago. They're using their newfound power to be absolutists. And I got to tell you, it's tough. I get the emails when the shows are over. People, I mean, I can go on and on, as I do, about how I feel the left is hurting our schools. Now, in this case, how the left is doing this. And the fact that I won't say President Trump is the greatest thing since sliced bread still annoys callers and people who write me and call me a liberal weenie. But that's the point on both sides. When you try and call it straight, it doesn't mean I'm right. And again, and it doesn't, I get emails that say we need balance. No, you don't need balance. For example, if there's a murderer, balance is when you have two sides to an issue. But if someone shoots somebody on the sidewalk, well, Bob, why don't you get on someone who defends killing? No, I'm not. And there are things the president's done that are right up there. And there are also things that the president's done where there needs to be another side. I'm sure there needs to be another side now when I throw the liberals under the bus. You know, Hastie could probably and rightly show us 1,000 things where people with a reefer or people with stole a few newspapers stayed in jail longer than they should. That's why we have judges. And if you don't trust the judges, then change that part of the system. Anyway, so that's why when all of us yesterday, and I'm going to highlight this, we need to call this governor to task. He avoided a major concern in his State of the State. And all of us are scratching our heads. Why? You've got your answer. His leadership doesn't want to do it. And so, since we have right here in our home county, and sometimes this thing gets in the way. I'm getting used to it. It saves a lot of space. Since we have Andrea Stewart Cousins, although she'd have to wait for the assembly to present it to her, we will invite her on. Friend of the program. We love all that she's accomplished. But if she agrees with him, she's going to have to do a lot of explaining why a judge shouldn't have some discretion. So we will reach out to her today and see if we can't get her on the show in a week or two. So you stay tuned for that. It is 6:50. We are going to open the phones. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. And I love going through the Post in the morning and the kind of stories they come up. Although only because they covered them. It's true. There's one. Hey, guess what? Clinton was on a plane with Epstein. So too was everybody else. But yeah. So I told you he was. I don't know why that matters right now, but I just get a kick out of those kinds of things. You know, the implications. I mean, certainly we're not going to defend that president's picadillos and things like that, but still, let's, you know. But that's why we make sure of all the, we use, the only time we buy lots of newspapers here is when our system is down or the computer or the printer breaks. But the one newspaper that I get, and someone emailed me yesterday about making sure I have balance, is the Post is a very fine newspaper that also, though, is very pro-Trump and very pro-right, and they make sure to get every story out there that's at all negative towards the Democrats. But that's good because it helps keep me honest, and at least they follow journalistic standards for the most part, unlike, let's say, Fox News or, well, Fox News, a little bit, but certainly Hannity and Rush. They gave, that ship sailed a long time ago. They're great at what we do, and both of them are better than perhaps I will ever be at talking on air and being exciting and interesting. But the fact that they have chosen to, to not be truthful is so unfortunate. But again, put them in a corner, get them in a corner, force them, and they'll say, I didn't say I was a journalist, I'm an entertainer. Okay, fine. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. I have a number. Let's go over the lineup for today. Vince will be joining us at 7:20. Janelle Albritton at 7:35. We are going to call her on her stand saying that it's fascist to insist that everyone get, I thought it was strong, everyone get vaccinated. Stephen Callis, who also works for the Westchester County Post.com. He'll be talking about the football picks coming up this weekend in the football games, the playoffs, the new manager, or the new head coach of the New York Giants, and also what's going on with the Rangers. And this very interesting player, Tony D'Angelo, who had been passed around, even though he was a high draft choice, he was passed around because it was felt that he was a bad actor, and it's turning out that New York is just what he needed. He may well be the best skater on the Rangers, by the way. So we'll be talking with him about that. He did something that hasn't been done for 40 years, and that is a defenseman getting 3 goals in a game. Jake will be giving us his picks of the week at 8 o'clock, and we'll be talking each and every game, putting it under the microscope with Steve right through about 8:20 or so. Then Dr. Victor Sternberg joins us. We will have a lot to ask him about. All of a sudden, the flu is becoming an overriding concern in the country right now, and we've got some people, young people now, have actually died. One 22-year-old died from the flu. Very unusual. Although almost always you find a pre-existing condition. And then at 9 o'clock, the first time he's been with us for a while, not first time for a while, that's redundant, or not redundant, it makes no sense. Damon Jones was with us about a month ago. He's the he's the owner, actually, the publisher, the co-owner with A.J. Woodson, but he's the publisher of Black Westchester magazine. We want to ask him about, for example, this Epstein stuff. What happens in prison when someone's suicidal? How did this guy manage to escape? How does he feel about the bail law? He is the head of blacks in law enforcement here in Westchester County, and in those ways, of course, has a liberal bent, as you might expect, but he also is in law enforcement. So we'll get his opinion on that. So we have a lot to talk about today. Now, in terms of other national and stories of interest, we got a few of those for you as well. California could launch its own generic prescription drug label. And they could become the first state with its own prescription drug label. That will save a lot of money. Boy, is that going to get the private drug companies up in arms. If they're able to sell their own generic drugs and reduce the cost of drugs. Now, we touched on this earlier. How do you feel about this? Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, already offered a job after announcing plans to step back as senior royals. Within 2 hours of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's landmark announcement that they would, quote, step back as senior members of the royal family. That means they're no longer employed as these symbols with the obligations of the royal family. They want to get a job and work to become financially independent. The Duke is actually 35. I called him a prince, but he's officially a Duke. He's 35. The Duchess, 38 of Sussex, already have a job offer via top stories articles. This according to the New York Daily News. But she's an actress as well, mostly in Canada, and it's done pretty well. But I'm sure they won't be scrounging for money. A 105-year-old woman renewed her driver's license. And she says, I wasn't going to sit around. Louis Estes Paulson, 105, still lives in her own home and goes to church. People often mistake her age for 75 or 80. But again, she's been tested. Her eyes are good. Her reflexes are good. No problem. By the way, this opens up another issue. Now, in a few months, I myself am going to come up on, and the reason I mention myself is it's not that it's about me, but to show you that I'll put my money where my mouth is. I believe that when people reach 70, they should be compelled to go in and take a driver's test all over again. Now, this will never happen politically. Oh, my God, the governor just hid under his desk. Hasty is hiding in the bathroom. Oh, no! And this would be conservatives or liberals. They don't want to mess with seniors because they vote. We vote. And we're already torqued off at the way Medicare is always being challenged and Social Security is already being challenged. And now you're going to tell us that we can't drive. Well, we should not drive if we can't drive. Sorry, Dad. Sorry, Mom. I would willingly accept that law if it applied to me. All right, let's move on. Oh, yes. ABC announced yesterday a live politically charged episode of its sitcom, The Conners. It will air on a timely night, the evening of the New Hampshire primary. Well, everybody's got a right to throw in their political opinions. Everybody, right, left, center, blah, blah, blah. Fans want rooting for the Browns and Bengals to be a condition for medical weed. That's silly. I'm not even going to go further with that. No, yeah, okay, I will. Somebody said, Bob, it involves football. Okay, rooting for two of the worst teams in the NFL is enough to drive any fan to drink or get stoned. If one wise guy gets their way, the Ohio State Medical Board received a petition to add being a Bengals-Browns fan as a qualifying condition for medical marijuana. They obviously haven't rooted for the Jets for the last 50-some-odd years, or for that matter, the last decade or so, the New York Knicks. So they don't know what it's like to be depressed, do they? Oh, yeah, I saw this yesterday. I saw this one on the news. A teacher has been charged when the teen's father said the student was not right for what he said to the teacher. He still wanted to pursue charges because the teacher dragged the kid out of the classroom. Now, I don't know about you, but where I went to high school, that was a different time. I know it was in the 60s. Go easy on me. But one brother, he had been a college football player, a lineman, about 6'6", about 300, not an ounce of fat. One of the students in class used the F word towards him, and he pushed the desk out of the way with one hand and went after the kid and dragged him into the hallway. The parents of this kid were happy that the judge did, that the teacher did what he did, but he probably shouldn't be doing that anyway. But it is a different time. You can't even tell a kid that you disagree with a shirt he's wearing without, or that he should comb his hair without getting called on the carpet. It's a whole different time. Anyway, I got to open this. 27 things. We'll get a hold of this during the break for you. Evidently, there are 27 things that non-Americans find funny about Americans. Don't you wonder what that is? Well, right after the 7 o'clock restart I'll come up with that for you. And, wow, listen to this. They're not out of the weeds yet. Severe winds in the eastern swath of Washington state have caused a nasty pileup of tumbleweeds, especially in the city of Kennewick, where longtime residents say the pesky plant-based problem has never been worse. It's impossible to get them out. They're covering houses. They're 7 feet tall. Kennewick, there's a professional hockey team. Well, it's called Major Junior in Canada, in Kennewick. All righty, it is 7 o'clock, and we're going to reset. You stay right there. We will be back with the weather and the traffic in just a minute or so. Good morning. Good morning again. It is 7:02. Welcome to Radio Westchester. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is the radio station at the train station, and it is Friday, January 10th, 2020. It is 34 degrees on its way to, and we'll cover that with you in a moment, on its way to 48 today. And we'll be back with the weather momentarily, and we will bring you the weather in its entirety. But I did promise you this review, and I just picked it off the printer. 27 things that non-Americans think are funny about Americans. Okay, so I want you to sit right there, because we are going to, as we promised, we're going to share the weather with you. But I want you to know that that's coming up, and then we'll talk with Vince at 7:20. So it should be a lot of fun to do. All righty. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And if you're just joining us for the 7 o'clock hour, we'll top this off with a couple of the more important news stories as well before we get into our guest list, etc. Here's the forecast for today. Mostly cloudy, mainly dry, but there could be an isolated shower in a few spots, especially north and west. Warmer with highs around 49. Tonight, mainly cloudy with some fog and the chance for a few spotty showers, lows around 44 degrees. Saturday, a gloomy looking day, but cloudy with early morning showers, but it's about the heat. It's about the heat wave. Most of the midday hours will be dry with clouds and some fog, but we'll have record warmth, 60 degrees. The high previously in history was 57, and that was back in 1935. Saturday night, did I say 35? 1975, excuse me. At night, cloudy with steady rain showers, warm and lows around 55. Sunday, more warmth, Extreme January warmth, highs around 66 degrees. It probably get up near 70. Possibly a previous record, by the way, was 60 back in 1885. They do expect early rain showers, though, to give way to breaks of afternoon sunshine. So it'll be near, it'll be near 70 with sunshine in the afternoon Sunday. I like that. This weather will be more typical of early May. The wind will be out of the south-southeast at 15 to 25 miles an hour. And don't you know, we'll get down to 39. It'll cool off at night. Monday, partly sunny. The high will be 48 degrees. Don't ask me why the weather's like that. The top of the hour is also brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio. Their shows are on our website now. They do a roughly 2-week. The law firm of Pena and Khan, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. Don't forget, they will be with you at 8 o'clock to sponsor Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente and Padrones and more. They will be sponsoring Jake's Picks of the Week in our conversation about the football playoffs, so it should continue this weekend. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Now, let's get to some of the, just a couple of the stories we want to make sure you are aware of. Internationally, the biggest story last night, and it makes total sense because the plane that crashed, they don't crash. And we're not talking about the MAX jet. We're talking about 737s. Of course, throughout history, there must be 5,000 or 10,000 of these planes out there. Of course, a handful have crashed over the 50 years it's been out and upgraded, but they don't crash unless they're flown by idiots like Malaysian Airlines and places like that. But having said that, we're not getting into the details of why some of these countries have a bad safety history. A lot of it has to do with training and investing in maintaining their airplanes and in their actual airline systems processes and how rigorous they are or are not. But anyway, what we found out yesterday, and the first word came from the Canadian Prime Minister because 63 of the people on that plane were from Canada. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Thursday evidence indicates an Iranian missile downed a Ukrainian jetliner. That's right. Evidently what happened was they had their anti-aircraft and anti-missile missiles, a system they bought from Russia. They had it all sensitized and ready to go, and it misread this ascending airliner as a missile. Sad story that 176 people now gone. And that's a tough break. Ukrainians, Canadians, no Americans on the plane, just a sad story. And Boeing, by the way, will be allowed in to help assess the damage. Although one of the things the Iranians did, it's just amazing when you're a totalitarian state, what you can do. The dream of every leader, even here, is to be able to control the press and just do what you want. They cleaned up the crash scene already. It was too late. People figured out, because of all the satellites and everything, that a missile got the plane. People figured out that got there early and took photos of it. Remember, Iran is a lot less domineering than all the other Middle Eastern countries. They actually have people with cell phones and freedom and things like that. So they did take a picture of the airliner, and there was shrapnel evidence that the plane was blown up in the sky. At any rate, so now that's the big story there. The impeachment continues. We won't get into that. And locally, of course, people are still up in arms over the fact that the governor didn't mention that the people and prosecutors and cops and judges want some amendments to the new bail law. And we figured out why Governor Cuomo went mum. And didn't mention it in the State of the State. Now it turns out that where that has to begin in the Assembly, Carl Hastie said he would not do that. And of course, Carl Hastie comes from the Bronx, and in the Bronx, Queens area now, it's moved to the left of of Karl Marx. So I don't know what we can expect. All right, let's lighten it up a bit, okay? It is on the heels of the holiday. The news is often depressing. Maybe we'll have some fun with this. Okay. 27 things that non-Americans find funny. Okay, what's so funny about me? Joe Pesci, by the way. And one, let's go. So 27 things. Okay, here's number one. This comes from BuzzFeed. It's so funny how Americans When they see bread on the table at a restaurant, they put oil, vinegar, and salt on it like it was salad. Hello, Lisa Artioli. I assume we got that from Italy. Now, those of you who are Italians out there, could someone update me on this? Is this a purely American thing? Now, this Lisa Artioli, and this was all published, so I'm not ratting anybody's name out. BuzzFeed went out and they asked for these comments. I'm wondering if Lisa actually knows what she's talking about, and if that comes from Italy or parts of Italy, Calabria, Sicily. I don't know. Anyway, just thought you'd find that interesting. Number 2, it always makes me laugh when Americans talk about being bummed and have no idea how filthy that is to UK listeners. Oh, bummed. Yeah, because the bum is a butt, and your bum is your, rear end. Okay. So far, I'm not impressed with this list, but we'll see. Okay. Number 3, I think it's funny how Americans take prom so seriously, like who invented that stuff. Proms, I guess. Well, it's like any other passage. This coming. Let's say, I wonder if it's coming from the UK. I can't tell because these are people that hold all this pomp and circumstance over a monarchy that should have been gone a long time ago. I mean, I respect why they have it, but really, that's hypocritical. Why Americans say bullcrap? It makes me laugh. Well, that's not that interesting. Okay. I think it's so funny how Americans call bum bags fanny packs. And if you called it that in Ireland or England, you get laughed at. Fanny pack. Okay. I think it's so funny. No, okay, here's the next one. Number 6. It's so funny how Americans play sports specific to their country and then crown themselves world champions. Now, that's an interesting... that's a bit Eurocentric because we're the best at baseball and the best at football. And actually, the Canadians and Russians are the best at hockey. We're probably third now, by the way. And we'll eventually be the best because of sheer numbers and our sports attitude. But that is, I guess, essentially true. But we don't do it with soccer. I don't care about soccer. In fact, let me just share this as an American. And I'm sorry if you have a little girl kicking a ball while she drools on herself and eats a cookie. Soccer is the easiest sport on the planet to play badly, okay? So you can keep it. You can be champions of the world. Fine. Baseball, we are the best. Football, we are the best. Soccer, we're not, but you can keep it. And there are a few other sports like that English rules football. No, what is it? Australian rules football and some curling in Ireland or whatever it is. I forget the name, so you'll forgive me. They should be the champions of the world, but I don't know. I thought that was an overstatement by this person. But you can keep your soccer, okay? Just go away, take it. It's so funny how Americans say Aaron, but it sounds like Aaron. Never heard that. All right, number 8. It's funny when Americans make fun of British place names because all their towns are either called Kalamazoo or Albuquerque, or they're called like Dogganus, Texas or something. That's pretty silly because most of the stuff here in the Northeast, you dumb wit, are the same names. Like Jersey, New Hampshire, Greenwich. Hello? A lot of Europeans are not as smart as we thought, huh? It's funny when Americans are like, I love your accent, as if they don't have accents. That's true. We think we're the center of the universe. 10, it's funny how Americans use Merry Christmas and Brits use Happy Christmas. Merry seems more British. Yeah, it's true. A little more dandy. 11, it makes me laugh when Americans say, well, pluck an A. Well, it does. Yeah. Well, okay, good. Another guy says, and number 12, it makes me laugh when Americans say fanny for butt because to me that means, well, that's right. I forgot to tell you, fanny means a woman's private parts. But there are a lot of things like that. Okay. It makes me laugh when Americans say, I'm done. Why would that make you laugh? I'm done. Well, we'd have to understand what it means to you. Number 14, it makes me laugh when Americans talk about their history. My garden wall is older than UA. Well, that's very true. That is so true. We are such a young country. You go to Europe and you visit a church, it's 500 years old. You go to the Vatican, it's hundreds of years old. You go to places in the UK, 1,000-year-old castles. I get it. But what I would say to Chio, this person Chio, is we have an awful lot of history of things that happened and changed and frankly helped change the world in our 200 brief years. Number 15. It makes me laugh when Americans randomly say period at the end of a sentence. Period. Well, that's like when you all say full stop, okay? They use that, by the way. You better just get this done. Full stop. That's their way of saying period. These people aren't as smart, these Europeans, as they're leading us to believe. This number 16. I always laugh when Americans pronounce the word duty as duty. All right. Number 17. It's so funny how Americans think of Europe as one big country. This one leaves me. There are a lot of Americans who think that. Like there were, Sarah Palin probably thought that Crimea was a hand cream. I mean, so I get it, okay? Plus you could see Russia from her house. Number 18. I think it's so funny how Americans are the only people who say I'm from X state instead of I'm from the United States. Well, yes, going back earlier, Taylor is the person's name. We have 50 states that have a certain amount of sovereignty. In fact, they wanted more sovereignty when our republic was formed. In fact, you all have a kind of a fake United States in your European Union, but you still hate each other and have bled one another to death for only 1,000 years. But I get this. We do say we're from New York. That's right. Unless we're in Europe, we'll say I'm an American. And otherwise, if they say, where are we from? And they know we're American, we assume they know we're American, then we tell them our state, yes. In fact, this particular dynamic goes back to why our best general in the Civil War decided to go on the side of the Confederacy. Not so much because he believed in slavery, because there were people in the North who believed in slavery, but Robert E. Lee felt he could not abandon his state. Now, he was asked to lead the American forces. He was asked to lead, that was a misuse of the word, the Union forces, just so you know. And it said that he walked all night in his mansion over in Arlington, and then he made the decision to stay with his state, which wound up being, of course, in the Confederacy. And that's why he wasn't as hated as some of, many weren't. Longstreet, one of his major generals, by the way, became an abolitionist after the war. And one of them went the other direction, became the head of the KKK, was a miserable human being. Nothing should be named after Nathan Bedford Forrest. But I do think my colleagues on the left have been a little too hard on Robert E. Lee, but that for another day. Because after all, he was a traitor. And that's where you get into a whole philosophical thing. It's hilarious, number 19, how Americans' first reaction to a problem is to sue. Yes, we are very litigious here. And why? Because we are all about the Benjamins. When you sue, you get money. We do have our little Achilles heels, don't we? I think it's hilarious, number 20 says, how Americans love to make shows about high school. They sure get a kick out of reliving their teen years. Never thought about that. But yeah, teen years are very formative. They're very traumatic and very troubling. And their the first time kids becoming adults get into odd social situations. So it's understandable why people would do shows about it, at least in my view. I'm not being defensive. I guess I can be defensive about America. But all right, let's continue. Number 21. It always makes me laugh when Americans post things like going from Texas to New York, like it's another part of the world or something. Well, yeah, you see, Trav, this is T. Miller. When you go from the UK to France, you go across, you take a train under the water, and you're there. When you go from the UK, let's say, to Germany, you take a 1.5-hour flight. Well, when we go from Texas to New York, because we have a very large country, we have to take a 4-hour flight. Dimwit. So I say that to T. Miller. All right, number 22. It always makes me laugh when Americans describe somebody as spunky. We haven't used that in a while. Plus, folks, spunky in Europe, we have other words for it here, but it has to do with, how can we say this, reproductive DNA kind of stuff, spunk. Anyway, okay. Number 23. It still makes me laugh when Americans say I'm rooting for someone in Australia means sex by. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm rooting for someone. I guess I've rooted for a lot of people. Well, I don't mean I've done it. I mean in terms of, coveting. Okay, I get myself in trouble. If you're listening, please know what I meant. I'll be getting a phone call from my other half in minutes. I love when Americans use the word sketch. It makes me laugh so much. Sketch. Well, all right. That one means nothing to me. Number 25, we've only got 2 left. I laugh when Americans say shoot is real. And actually the other word, because usually it never is. And here's another guy. Number 26, when Americans laugh and follow up with, that's funny, it always throws me off. It feels like it should be sarcasm. Well, yes, if you're a Brit, they will sometimes say something is funny when it's not. They like to insult with a very sharp knife, and you don't know you're bleeding till afterwards. I was in the UK once, and this gentleman who we worked with was talking about how wonderful baseball players were and the way they catch the ball in their mitt. And I happened to notice he was watching their game, their similar game, cricket, when the guys don't use mitts. And he was making fun that we use mitts, or that our football players, in deference to their rugby, have a lot more equipment. Well, what I want them to do is get some linebacker to go right into the middle of their bodies and see if, because they do have tackle, but they don't go charging into people. They pull one another down. I'll do that all day with no clothes on, particularly in the right circumstances. Anyway, but when you've got someone coming at you at 25 miles an hour who's built like a monster, you need equipment. So anyway, but still, that's their kind of humor. And the last one, number 27. Makes me laugh when Americans say, you know what, I'm done. That's the second one to say that, I'm done. Yeah, that means I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. Why is it so complicated? All right, it's 7:21. Vince should be joining us momentarily. He always, I can tell, and I've been through this over the years, a lot of callers, one regular caller at my old show, I obviously used to sneak in another commercial because he would always, his phone was off. He would always call exactly 3 minutes after the appointed round. So Vince is right on time, 1 minute after, but that's by my clock. So you can predict that he will call 1 minute after. Now, he used to call early, but then he got mad because I didn't pick up. Anyway, we're going to ask him about this oil and salt thing. He's got a Sicilian wife who ought to know about these things. Please welcome Vince Russo. Good morning, Vince. How are you?
Brilliant, Bob. Brilliant.
Oh, you like? Isn't it funny the way Europeans view us and some of the things they think is funny about us? I found that amusing. It wasn't as insightful as I thought it would be. It was rather shallow. But the one I wanted to ask you about, Mr. Brilliant, is now you come. Stop. You come from Italian stock. And
I do.
Your wife is extremely Italian. Well, she's not like she doesn't run around, cursing in Italian, but she came from a really deeply Italian neighborhood, all mobbed up, I might add, by the gallows.
My wife came from that neighborhood, but she is not Italian.
Well, she's Polish and Italian, right?
No, she's Polish and Sicilian. They're not Italian.
Oh, yeah, real. You want to go there? You really want to go there? Is she listening? I may make a little call later. Oh, she's not Italian. But, I can share this because now I've got the victim. I actually have the person. He tells this man the most heinous ethnic joke that I used forever. His wife is Italian and Sicilian and Polish, and he says she stabs herself in the back. It's one of my favorites. And,
I wonder who that could be.
Yeah, which room are you sleeping in tonight? But anyway, one of the first items on this list was some Italian, but it didn't say if they were from Italy or not. Evidently, the whole thing that we do in Italian restaurants with the oil and the vinegar and then dipping the bread in, they say that's American, that's not really an Italian thing. Now, Anthony's listening and other people, I thought it came from Italy. Didn't you?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. Brilliant. I don't know if it is, but there's a lot of things here that we consider Italian that are really Italian-American. The extensive use of garlic is not really Italian. It's really Southern Italian and Sicilian. If you get like in the northern portions of Italy, they hardly use garlic at all. It's a lot of onions and things like that. And what happened was the Italian immigrants, when they came to this country, they had to, just like other cultures, they had to substitute ingredients that they were used to in their home country for things that they had here, and garlic was one of them. So a lot of the food that we have here is really Italian American food. It's not strictly from Italy. But the one thing that you notice that Americans do, and I'm surprised they didn't say it on your list, is every other word is like. I was talking to Bob the other day, and we were talking about these different things. But the Brits, what they do...
I've beaten that out of my grandson, by the way, but go ahead. Beaten it out of him. Go ahead.
If you listen to what the Brits do, they substitute like for the phrase sort of.
Yes.
So if we're talking and, we're talking, and they will put that in there the way we put the word like in there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they will. Well, every society and language has their idiosyncrasies. But now I'm going to talk some people off, but it's fun when I do this. Do you know, I love Italian food, as you know, but there are some Italian restaurants, when I see this word up there or this phrase, I don't go into. Can you guess what it is?
Oh, boy.
Northern Italian. What in God's name does that mean? Northern Italian.
Well,
and they got noodles without red sauce, and they got piccata, and they got these other weird dishes. No, I don't go in there. And they cook with too much butter.
Well, see, but that is exactly what I was saying before. It's a style of cooking that is prevalent in the north of Italy. There's the red sauces and all of that is more southern Italian, and because if you look in the northern part of Italy, it's got a lot of Germanic and French influence.
Oh yeah, and then the Alps, and as you know, I was once rather friendly with a northern Italian woman who had bright blue eyes and fair skin.
Yeah.
Of course,
my brother-in-law's family was Genoese, and
the
he
salami
had
Genoese.
He had cousins over there named Klaus, Bruno. So it's Germanic influence up there, and French influence. So the cooking is influenced by that. The French use a lot of butter and such in their cooking. As I said, they use onions instead of garlic, and
well, that's my point.
So
I went into a northern Italian restaurant once, and at first I thought there was fish in the sauce, but there were all these onions. It was awful.
Well, yeah. You don't like that style of cooking.
No. By the way, since you're from southern Italy, Mary's even off the island from. Actually, my daughter did the thing for me. What do you call it? The ancestry stuff. And evidently, I'm 80% Sicilian, and my grandmother. Now, my mom's family was from. God, laugh, but you remember what my grandmother used to say. The only good Sicilian's a dead Sicilian. Thanks a lot, Grandma. I love it. And it was a different time. It was, and if we don't talk about these things, it's so intellectually dishonest. Of course, they were. In fact, by the way, if I may, since you're a Southern Italian, these people that you're bragging about from the North, they hate you. They looked at you as the lower caste.
You're absolutely right. If you were from Genoa or Florence or any of those places up there, they looked at, and see, we weren't the Southern Italians. We were kind of midway down, from Naples, Sorrento, in that area, and then we subsequently looked down on the real Southerners down in Calabria and Sicily and all of that. So it all rolls downhill.
Does Mary know she's a gutter snipe? You should tell her that. Oh, man. Do you remember, folks, we're sharing, I grew up with Vince. Do you remember, my grandmother's best friend was Mrs. Ponzo next store?
Yep.
And my grandmother, when she yelled at me, would curse in Italian. I didn't know any of it.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Ponzo used to... I didn't know I was being bribed. I was being played. So she'd say, she was from the other side originally, and so she still had a deep Italian accent. She said, but come up. I got the Twinkies. No, it wasn't Twinkies. What was it that I liked? The Devil Dogs. Some devil dogs and soda. Come up. I have it for you. So I go up. So tell me, when your grandmother's upset with you, what does she say? Now, I can't even repeat some of it because Italians will be listening and they're cuss words. And I didn't know, so I'd say, well, I ate the top off the Italian bread the other day and put it back in the bag, and she started doing something about, anyway, the equivalent was your mother's tush and worse and stuff like that. I didn't know it. Yeah. And I tell Mrs. Ponzo, and she'd start laughing so much she was crying. Thank you. Oh. So 2 days later, I come home from school, and my grandmother's headed to the door like she's going to kill me. And she didn't have an accent at all. Oh, so you're telling Mrs. Ponzo what I say to you? Oh, man, she was... Mrs. Ponzo used to bribe me all the time. It was great. So
I have a favorite Italian joke, and only people who understand Italian will get this.
All right, go ahead.
So there was a teacher in school, and she, it's a public school, and she says, I want only the Jewish children to give me a sentence with the word synagogue in it.
Uh-huh.
So there's this little Italian boy. He just came over from the other side, doesn't speak a lick of English, and he's jumping up and down, and he's waving his arms and stuff like that. And she said, "No, Giuseppe, not you, just the Jewish children. Give me a sentence with the word synagogue in it." And he's jumping around, he's waving his arms. So finally, the other children aren't responding. So she says, okay, Giuseppe, give me a sentence with the word synagogue in it. And he goes, teacher, si inugag scatta.
What does that mean?
So in Italian means, si inugag means, if I don't, how do you say it without using the word, if I don't take a dump, scatta, I'll bust.
I can't.
Inugag.
Remember all the different, and talk about biases. Remember every different type. If you're from a different city, you were either obstinate. What's the one hard-headed? Hey, he's brutzes. What's the one hard-headed? What's that? What was that? Right?
Calabrese, I think. I think it was Calabrese.
Yeah. I got to go because there's a wonderful man here in the city that I've gotten to know really well, who's head of civil service, and he's a member of the Calabria Society. I do have a hard head. He punches me in the nose. I was going to mention something else, and I can't remember what it was because when you mentioned that, it kind of took my mind away from it. Oh yes. I've never talked about this on the air before because it was a different format. But do you remember how much I hated my family dog?
Bo.
And then I've got, well, you know what? The problem is my mom didn't discipline him. So
I know.
He never shot. But do you remember the worst still? Now, I love dogs, folks. Don't get the wrong idea. Do you remember my sister Mary's dog? That little crazy poodle? That used to
that yappy
attack
dog.
me. Used to attack me. And my brother-in-law threw him in the oven one day. He didn't put and Mary, I'm so close with my sister, the one in Florida, and we love each other. The only time she didn't talk to me for a week because Allie, her husband, opens the oven, throws the dog in and closes it, goes, "I've had enough." And I'm cheering. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, keep him in there. Put on the heat. She didn't talk to me for a week. I hated that dog. Oh, and do you remember when I leave my mother's house, he'd run down the hallway and leap at me and bite me. So I used to do this terrible thing. My mother remember the old homes? They had the series of vestibules to manage the heat. So you in one door and then another. And he used to leap up at me, so I just opened the door a little bit when he leaped. Bang! He'd slam right into it.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's where we used to store our hockey equipment.
Oh, no, we used to store our hockey equipment under my grandmother's stoop, under the stoop. It was in there. And,
right.
Remember when I was under all that pain and the dog kept yapping? I remember when my mother wouldn't give me, my mother was the dental assistant, folks, and she did everything from write prescriptions, it was the way it was then, to assist, run the office. And she didn't want her own son, after they drilled into my jawbone, remember that? They had to drill into the bone to get out my impacted tooth. And so all she gave me was some sort of aspirin.
Right.
Remember, I left my car running at a stoplight, if you remember, with the door open. I ran into the dentist. Help me, I am in agony. And finally they gave me a proper med, but it didn't take. Do you remember Bo was screaming, bark, 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 bark. I grabbed him around the head. I got him in a headlock. Shut up.
Stop pounding him.
Look who came in. Take a seat. Take a seat.
Oh,
Go.
my word.
Hey, Vince, I want you to meet someone. I love this woman. She used to call regularly. Now she's on the way to the train. She works in the city. What she does is of a questionable nature. But well, she walks around Times Square. I know she does. And actually, she's a successful woman. Yeah, but stay with us, Vince. You say, I don't think you've ever met her one-on-one. And she's one of the few people who call and give us her last name. And she is Lorraine Carl. Good morning, Lorraine.
Good morning. I just wanted to tell you, when I tuned in,
Yeah.
I have the New Year's Day show.
What do you mean? Today?
Yeah.
No, maybe you clicked on the wrong one.
Oh, all right.
But this is the new year. If you want, baby, I'm here. How are you?
I'm
You're
fine.
taking me back in history. How do you feel? You had a really bad cold. Happy New Year to you.
Happy
You know we
New
love
Year
you.
as well. It's still, I'm fighting it, so I won't get too near the mic in case.
But weren't you supposed to stay home for a few days and take
I
it
did
easy?
one day.
Say hello to Vince.
Hello, Vince.
Hello, how are you?
You've heard Lorraine on the air many, many times. She's a wonderful woman and has called and annoyed me for years, but in a good way. So you're on your way to work?
Yes. I attended the most recent Board of Ed meeting.
Yes.
Dr. Fay, who presented her 60-day, whatever she did.
And what did you think?
For me, I think the honeymoon is over.
Oh, her husband just came in to tell her goodbye. Her driver. Get out of here. He's a very good contractor, by the way. We're gonna
Driving.
Oh, he's Uber. Her Uber. The Uber mensch and husband. Oh, my.
I do what I'm told.
Don't we all? We all do
Oh,
what
I
we're
was
told.
just going to say that.
Yeah, no, he knows his place. He believe me, he does. Lorraine takes no prisoners. No, so tell me, Dr. Fajo, I'm still in her corner, by the way.
Yes,
What did you
I
think?
mean, I just think the honeymoon's over for me.
And what does that mean?
I'm
Why? What did
really
she do that you
going.
didn't like?
Well, the plan was okay. It was very long.
No, I get that a lot.
But I didn't learn anything. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention.
No,
but
or maybe it's just too soon for her to get into meat and potatoes.
Yes.
But the honeymoon, she didn't even have a honeymoon.
all right, and also,
I mean,
They
she got to the honeymoon chamber and and her husband was a mass murderer.
but also they mentioned how she was friendly with or familiar with Mr. Oganishak, which to me cuts the wrong way. Because of him, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, but should we judge ourselves by our friends? Like the guy on the phone now is one of the most miserable human beings
No,
I
he
know,
is
but I'm
not.
not.
I've heard him on.
But
the
I'm
ra-
not. And,
I don't know. This is something I have to work around.
well, give it time. And I have to tell you, I didn't know enough about Richard's performance.
Mm-hmm.
All I knew is I knew him one-on-one. He was a nice guest on the radio.
Okay.
And but I understand he was very political and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
blah.
I mean, a lot of the things that Bob Cox started writing
No, I
about was
understand.
under his,
I do understand.
And also they're going to have a budget meeting, a town hall budget meeting, on the 27th, but they're only going to have the high school.
Why?
That I don't know.
Well,
And to me, is this just a knee-jerk reaction to keep people in the high school? Because a lot of people are leaving.
could be.
But if you're not looking forward to the next 5 years, we have to make sure we can feed children into these programs that they want, or will some of these programs become outdated?
Yeah. And by the way, Lorraine is someone, folks, for those of you who are listening, this is Radio Westchester, 738. Vince is on the line with us. And what's kind of nice about us being here at the train station, people who call in, sometimes they can just walk in, as she
Right.
has. And she follows, and you're all very fair-minded about the schools, Lorraine. And because you're not all the way to the right or the left. You just want the right thing. You stick up for the kids that don't get the resources that they should, but you're nobody's fool. So you're going to give her a little more time before you put the X on her.
I will. And she's willing to meet with anyone, she says. So she's, if a PTA asks her to come, she'll be there.
Have you met with her yet? She should
I
have a Lorraine Carl meeting.
I actually am on PTA council as the historian.
You're the historian?
Yes.
Tell me, give me some school history. When the school burned down and then they rebuilt it?
No, I was working then. I never went to Rochelle High School. My parents wouldn't let me go there.
Where'd you go?
St. Gabriel's.
Oh, Catholic school.
Yeah, they were really pro.
I went to Catholic grammar school, but high school.
Grammar school too, but I really wanted to go to the high school.
Vince went to reform school, then a 700 school.
Did he?
It didn't work. It didn't help.
Well, for us at St. Gabe's, there were a lot of New Rochelle kids, but then in my class, there were kids from the Bronx and Mount Vernon, and that was very intriguing.
Well, that's right, because you had different people there.
Yes,
Diversity
exactly.
matters. Bishop Ford was like that. So I went to a great high school, which now they had to sell because of the scandal in the church. They needed the money.
Oh, well.
And I love that school.
But St. Gabe's is the alternative high school now for New Rochelle High School.
What does that mean, the alternative school?
There's children that do better in a smaller environment.
Well, yeah.
And they choose to go there, and I guess they take tests. And
Oh, but they got to pay, though. Right?
No.
St. Gabriel's is free?
Well, it's no longer St. Gabriel's. The school district rents it.
Oh, is it like for special kids? When I mean special, I mean gifted or troubled?
Well, no, not necessarily. I think some kids that are troubled, but
Like
they realize
Vince,
they are troubled, and they want to be educated, and get away from that environment. I think.
That's good that we have that
Yeah,
alternative.
it's really, I think there might be about 80 children.
Wow,
students.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So once in a while they have a Board of Ed meeting there, so I get to see my old high school, which is really...
That's nice.
You think so?
Sure. You don't want to see
I
your
still
old high
see
school?
visions of the nuns coming down the hall.
Now, I have to be careful with this one. Did your nuns have men names?
Because
our
think
nuns
about
did.
Sister Regina.
No, we had Sister...
Sister Ambrose.
No,
is
we
that
had
her?
Sister St. Joseph. We had Sister Henry Aaron. Although we had one nun. I don't know why. Remember, Vince? Did you went to that school, that grammar school?
Yeah, and I remembered when we were, if a kid was troubled, he got a whack across the knuckles with the ruler or a whack on the bottom, and he wasn't troubled anymore.
Well, we talked about that earlier. Some teacher out west is in trouble. A kid insulted him, and he dragged the kid out of the class.
Uh-oh.
I had a brother, and I speak, the nuns and the brothers I had that educated me were the best. I could never figure out why they have men's names. Although, remember Sister Georgina Louise, God bless her? But because Cannonball, that was her name. She was perfectly round.
Oh my
Boy,
God.
she took no prisoners. This guy Dominic DeAmber cursed at her one day in the hallway. Guess who she misidentified? Guess who she misidentified as the perpetrator?
You?
You?
Yeah.
Wow.
She gave me a shot right in the head, and whenever she was angry, she'd always say, "You're bold." But no, I loved those teachers, and I loved, especially in St. John's, and then again in Bishop Ford. But we had a brother Carmine, who was 6'7", 6'8", had played college football lineman.
Wow.
Who a kid used the F word on him. I told this story a little earlier today. With one hand, she just spit up a kidney on the floor. With one hand. He pushed the desk out of the way, Vince. One hand, the whole desk, and the whole glass froze. He dragged him out in the hallway, and all we could do was hear the lockers jingle. Then went the left lung. And,
Yes.
But that was a different time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember our nuns at high school doing that.
Well, nuns didn't know, but they could be tough. But the nuns were great. She's coughing again. Her left sinus just hit the window in the back of the studio.
You moved.
Jake,
the nuns treated the girls a lot
Bob,
worse
I
than
don't
they
want to
treated the
infect you.
boys.
yeah, that's true. Were the nuns harder on the girls in your school as they were?
Well, I have a story.
Go ahead, tell us your story.
I was on the cheerleading squad, and we had a None.
Why am I not surprised?
Sister Ambrose.
With your reputation here in town.
And at the time, in my day, you had to wear a full slip to school under your uniform.
Yeah.
You had sisters, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We had great nuns.
No, your sister. I mean.
I had
yes.
they were adopted sisters. But
Yes.
yes.
So I was in the girls' room. Meanwhile, we had one man in our school, the janitor, who must have been about 102. Okay, that was the one man. She comes in, and I'm in my full slip, ready to put my cheerleading uniform on.
Getting excited.
And she says to me, "You are a sight for no man's eyes." So I looked around. I was the only one in the girls' room. Get dressed. So I got dressed, and I went back to my homeroom. And she said, "Class, we're going to have our ending prayers. We're going to dedicate it to a classmate that has gone astray." And it was me.
Now, let me ask you something. What? Did you roll up your skirt?
Oh, God, yes.
Oh. Do you know how cruel that was? See, I went to an all-boys high school.
Okay.
And I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't have been concentrating. In fact, you know what I used to do? And I'm admitting to this now, and for those of you out there who want to shoot me, yes, I'm guilty. I deliberately managed the dance committee.
Oh.
Because I was the guy that got to bring the tickets to the girls' high schools.
Oh, my gosh.
I'd be going up and down that hallway. I almost got my neck stiff from looking either right and left.
We had dances every Friday night at the old Blessed Sacrament Elementary School.
I bet you did.
It was called the Campion Club.
So you rolled up your skirt.
So, you could meet, I guess, boys from the public schools, I think, went as well. It was fun.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I love you. Well, listen, thanks very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry for coughing.
No, that's okay. Jay, could you pick up her left kidney and put it in a briefcase? Thank you so much, Lorraine. Instead of calling, she came in person. I love that. Have a safe ride on the train. Vince, isn't she a wonderful gal?
Very nice, very
Yeah,
nice.
she
Brings back memories from those days from Catholic school.
But you know what? Go ahead.
Sister Georgina Louise, she used to throw the N-word around frequently.
Yeah, well, that was a different time, Yeah, well, really. I forgot that she did that. But Lorraine's the same woman, if you recall, who a few years ago made the mistake of calling the show and saying, I got to take this call. So you're going to go. I'm running late. I didn't realize how late I landed. Listen, I got to run, Vin. I'll talk to you later. All righty. I think we've caught up either with Stephen Callis or we've caught up with Janelle Albritton. Who do we have? The pleasure of speaking.
Steve Callis here.
Oh, we're glad you're there. We're going to ask you just to stay on hold, Stephen, because I have to do some weather and reset. Stephen Callis is with us. We're going to talk with him. In fact, we're going to invite Jake to come to the microphone. We'll be with the two of them for a while as we talk sports. But first, a little bit of music is in order. We need to reset the weather, and we want to thank Vince Russo from North Jersey. We want to thank Lorraine Carl, and we go straight on now into sports. And let's get into some weather. I'm looking at the temperature. It's 34. It's 34 on its way to 46 today, and that's going to be the high. And that's not a bad deal, but the real issue is going to be tomorrow. But let's get into today first. Today it'll be mostly cloudy, mainly dry, but there could be an isolated shower in a few spots, especially north and west. Warmer with highs around 49. Tonight, mainly cloudy with some fog and the chance for a spotty shower. Lows around 44 degrees. Tomorrow, and Vince, I hope you're listening, because he can be out there with his Speedo. Love to wear Speedos. He does. A gloomy-looking day, but cloudy with an early morning shower possible. Most of the midday hours are dry with clouds and some fog. Record warm high, though. It'll get up to 60 degrees, and the previous high on that day was back in 1975. It was 57. At night, cloudy with steady rain showers, though tomorrow night warm and lows around 55. Sunday's the big day, extreme warmth for the holiday, or for the weekend, that is. 66 degrees, may kiss 70. The previous record goes all the way back to 1885 when it got up to 60. So this will be a record. And it will be cloudy Sunday night, partly cloudy, mostly clear. Lows around 39 as it cools off. And naturally, when you come back to work on Monday, partly sunny. The high will be 48 degrees. The overnight low will be 36. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. The bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And that, of course, opens the door for sports. And we're going to get to that right now. Now that's perfect sports music. We did it before. It sounds like what they do in the NHL when someone scores a goal, but really it's about two things. We have on the other end of the telephone Stephen Callis from ESPN right now. Well, he does ESPN Radio. He's been on many other radio outlets throughout the region. He also is the sports editor for the Westchester County Post.com. He's posted some interesting stuff lately. We're going to talk sports with him, Jake and I are. And right after that, we're going to share Jake's picks of the week. And this entire segment is brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Without further ado, let me get the mics up. We put on Jake's mic, but more importantly, we put on the mic of our guest. Please welcome Stephen Callis. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Great to be with you, as always.
Your public awaits. Did the Giants pick the girl at 4 o'clock in the morning in the bar before they closed after all the pretty ones were gone? Or was this a part of their master plan?
Well,
it's a 4
hard
in the
to say. Joe Judge has a great rep. I think I've told you, unfortunately, my son is a Patriots fan, and you know, he thinks he's another NFL coach in waiting like Brian Flores last year, who's now with the Dolphins. And, you know, the Belichick tree is all over the place now. In fact, they're all coming back to beat Belichick, like Mike Vrabel. And, you know, I think it's going to be a wait-and-see kind of thing. I don't think they gutted their defense, not this past year, but the year before. And their defense has not been really good. I just don't know. I think they need a lot more than a coach. They're not as bad as the Knicks, although they're in the neighborhood, but the Knicks need more than a coach, although the new coach, as you pointed out, is doing well. I just think it's kind of a wait and see. But again, the Patriot tree, the Patriot way, that's been the dominant thing the last few years in terms of these new coaches.
Very much so. But what about the Giant hierarchy? And again, your mic's on. You want to join this, please, Jake, at any point. Good morning to you. What about the hierarchy? It doesn't seem like they planned this well. And is that another indication that Gettleman should be gone? Or do you think Mara and the people over him are exerting influence that maybe there's some, what's the right word, organizational dysfunction?
Well, I think Gettleman's kind of an NFL lifer, as you know, and I think they liked his pitch. But his press conference this year, well, first of all, last year when he said, "I've got a plan, I'm just not going to tell you what it is." That's all. Do you remember that last year? You can ask Jake. He probably saw the press conference, and it's like you're looking at him and like, are you kidding me? It's like Harden after the playoffs last year. Oh yeah, I know what we have to do to beat Golden State. Okay, what is it? I'm not going to tell you. And that was just weird. And then this time, you saw how he was behind the times with the whole analytics thing, the computer guys. That press conference was, I have to learn from my mistakes. Hold it, you've been in the league 50 years, or probably more like 25. So I think it's more a problem with the coach. And by the way, as you know, see the Knicks, you can't fire the owner. So I think those guys are here to stay.
Yeah,
you know, John Mara has a couple of Super Bowls on his resume. But I think I'm surprised Gettleman's still around and Shermer had to, be the one to walk the plank, so to speak.
Although Jake, if I'm not mistaken, has felt that he wasn't that good of a coach anyway. What about that, Jake?
I was never a big Shermer fan. Some of his in-game decisions I thought were terrible. I guess he does get credit for Daniel Jones, whatever we think Daniel Jones is.
Well, what about Barkley?
What do we think? What do we think, Jake? It's the jury's still out, I assume. It is for me.
I agree with you, but the media has already anointed him as the next big thing. To me, he's a turnover machine. He has a lot of upside, but I still think he's got a lot to prove still. I don't think he's headed for the Hall of Fame just yet.
All right. Well, we're going to come back to football a little later when we do Jake's Picks of the Week, and then we compare him to the wheel. We'll do that, too. We have our own bizarre wheel here where the bizarre wheel picks the games as well. So more football. But I want to go to hockey because you've done, and it's about a specific player. You've done a lot of work down in the South Jersey, Philadelphia area, if I'm not mistaken, in your radio and sports career.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of Eagles stuff still. Obviously, they got knocked out, but yeah, I've done a couple of years now down there.
The reason I bring that up is because Tony D'Angelo is from that area, and he was drafted. And now we, because of the hockey circles I travel in and the ice hockey that I'm involved in with my grandson, we were aware of. He's a very, very gifted guy. In fact, he's showing it now. He's probably the best skater on the team. And he now is becoming what people thought he could be. But he was given up by a couple of teams, and even the Rangers had to discipline him. A bit of not a bad actor, just wasn't a good teammate. What do you know about him? Because however the Rangers are managing him, when you look at him, he's not really that good defensively yet, but he absolutely is their best rushing defenseman and their best defenseman on the power play since Leach.
Yeah, I think he's maturing a little bit now over time. I mean, I'm sure you're talking because he obviously had a hat trick and 2 assists.
Yes, thank you.
That's the all-time Ranger record for a defenseman in a single game. In fact, you'll love this. The last person to do that was Brian Leach in the 1995 playoffs. But no Ranger defenseman has ever scored more than a hat trick in the game or more than 5 points in the game. So I think it's kind of a maturity thing for him. He's the 5th leading scoring defenseman in the NHL right now after last night. And he's, to me, I've watched the interviews this year more, and it just strikes me as he's just a little more mature, and maybe he's seen this as really his chance. I would say Kreider's the best skater, but he might very well be the second best skater on the Rangers.
I think Kreider's the best skater speed-wise. But in terms of agility, lateral movement, and changing speeds, which is important, I find. I don't want to say that I'm a big critic of Kreider, but some nights he's not there, as you know. And
100%. Yep, I agree.
And he doesn't have the greatest hands in the world, but if he played hard every night, he'd be making a lot more money because he's a monster. He's one of the fastest people in the league, and he's absolutely fit. Have you ever seen the video? And imagine this, folks. He jumps. I don't know if you've seen this, Jake. This guy can jump out of a pool with the water up to his waist. Do you know how much leg strength that takes?
Freak athlete.
So anyway, but I want to go back to him. Do you remember Reijo Ruotsalainen, 5'6" defenseman, the greatest skating defenseman I ever saw? And again, mostly with, but anyway. So what did you, when you were down there, did he have a bad reputation in South Jersey, as we heard in Philly, as we heard in the circles I play hockey with down there?
Yeah, he did have a little bit of a bad boy, not the greatest teammate. But again, I think sometimes you just got to give these guys, change of venue, coupled with age, coupled with this is my chance, coupled with, I'm pretty sure, maybe Bob, I'm not 100% sure, this is a contract year for him.
Oh, yeah.
They should extend him now.
Oh, yeah.
And that always kind of makes you grow up, if you will, or makes you mind your P's and Q's when you're in that contract year. I'll use Jadeveon Clowney in the NFL as another example. He's playing for a contract. And things just seem to change when you're up in your contract year like that. And now he's obviously, again, one of the leading defensemen in the NHL in scoring. He's on the right track to get a good contract from somebody.
Well,
Will it be the Rangers?
I
think it should be.
They'd be crazy to get rid of him. And I didn't like him. I was not a big fan of his because of what I knew and the way he played and moaned in his first year. But again, being a student of this sport more than any other and coaching it for so long, I watched him bring the puck up. And he reminds me a little bit, and he could even be better. They had him at the end of his career, Dan Boyle in his prime. You couldn't steal the puck from him. He reminds me a little bit of that. But more importantly, you mentioned salary. He is on the not the minimum. He only makes about $900,000, and he held out to get it. He now is going to require a big contract, and the Rangers are going to have to get rid of somebody, and it could be your aforementioned Kreider. I mean, they can't afford him. So it's a nice problem to have.
I think you're right about Kreider in terms of he every once in a while you go, oh my goodness, and you do know how fast he is, but he really hasn't been that consistent high-level player that I think certainly I thought he would be a few years ago. He isn't quite there, but his speed makes him kind of a valuable asset to have on the team.
Oh God, yeah.
And so the Rangers don't have a lot of stars. Panarin has answered the bell well. He's got 61 points in 43 games. And New York hasn't faced him at all. And the last thing I'll say about the Rangers is I thought you were going to say the guy we have to talk about today is Igor Shesterkin, but D'Angelo did upstage him for at least one night last night.
Well, Shesterkin, I know a little bit about his history. He's considered the best goalie prospect on the planet right now. He was a little nervous night one. I didn't see a lot of the game last night. I understand he performed really well. With goalies, it's early. A guy can come up. You remember about 4 years ago, the Hamburglar? Guy came out of the minors and was 21-3. 21-3 with like a 198 goals against average. Has not been able to stick in the NHL. Goalies are weird. Goalies are like relief pitchers, except that once they get established and really get there. But this guy's supposed to be the real deal. One other thing about hockey, and then I'll move on. But the Rangers, A, Zibanejad, but B, since you follow Philly, and I used to hate them, which is silly because the way they were 40 years ago is not the way they are now.
No, I used to hate them too.
They've got some interesting clubs, but why have they been able to put it together? Is it management there? They've got a good, steady coach now, but one of their problems is they're always going to guys that used to play for the team to run the place. But
yeah, I think they finally have a goalie. I mean, they've been looking for a goalie for years. Every year they had the choice of 2 or 3 not very good goalies, and now they got this young guy,
Carter Hart.
I think he's the real deal. And that always, people say the quarterback in football, well, if that's the most important position, then the second most important position in sports to me has to be the goalie in hockey, no?
Yes. And you know what's underrated in hockey now? Because all the defensemen that can fly, and the Rangers prove it every other night. If you don't have a good defense in hockey, you're gonna win a lot of games, but you're never going to win a championship. You have got to keep the shots down. You can't rely on a goalie, and that's why I'm always amazed that whenever the Rangers have to kill a penalty, they pull Brad Smith off forward because all their defense. The guy, what they might do, even though I like him, they could buy out Stahl in order to pay this kid.
That would be tough, but that's certainly going to be an option now because he's been with the Rangers forever, but he hasn't been like one of their top players the last couple of years.
Okay, it's 8:00, and you know what that means. It's time for football. It's time for Jake's picks, and of course, Steve rides shotgun with us when we do this. Jake's picks are brought to you by, and stay right there, Steve Callis. It is 8:02. Jake's picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Now, I've got to share this with you. We've started conversations with them. We were there the other day. It looks like we will be doing a Super Bowl special on the Friday before the Super Bowl right there at Dominic's Fine Cigars.
Come by, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, we will definitely invite you to come by for that live. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're first going to do the picks. Then we're going to have the wheel do the picks. Then we're going to have Steve do the picks. And then we'll talk football and we'll talk the players. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Jake, good morning once again, even though we said hello to you earlier today.
Good morning.
Anthony called the other day, and he wanted to know even Wednesday what your lock of the week is. So we'll save that for 4th. Now let's cover the games and who you like, who you don't like, and what the spreads are. What's game number 1?
Well, I agree with our friend Bud Poliquin to get this late into the season, this late into the playoffs, and to have a 9-point spread, a 9.5-point spread. It's almost an insult to the fans. So,
Give us the game first.
I'm going to take the Texans getting 9.5 in Kansas City against the Chiefs.
Okay, that's your bet. Do you think they're going to win the game
No,
too?
the Chiefs will win the game, but 9.5 points is way too many points this
All
time
right.
of the year in the playoffs.
Let's see. We're going to get your picks, but what do you think of that pick, Stephen?
I'm going to go the opposite way on that game, not because I don't think 9.5 is very high, but just because Mahomes is healthy. And you know, and I'm sure Jake will tell us, that the Texans beat the Chiefs this year in Kansas City, 31-24. But again, I think the Chiefs right now, with Mahomes healthy and defensively, the last 6 games, they've given up like 12 points a game. I think this one could be a rout, and I think the Texans are very lucky to even be there. So on that game, I'm going to go with the Chiefs, although I'll agree with Jake on the other 9.5-point spread. I don't know which way he's going, but I think in that game, the other game, it's going to be too much, but I'll wait for him to make his pick.
Okay, the second Jake pick of the week. Jake.
I will take the 49ers at home against the Vikings. They are giving 7 points. I don't know how the Vikings are here. They are, though. I think I think this one's pretty
So you're
easy.
taking the 49ers.
I'll take the 49ers at home against the Vikings, giving 7 points. I will
Wow.
take, this one was tough, in Green Bay. I'll take Aaron Rodgers. I think this might be his last shot at greatness.
Really? He's getting old?
He's getting up there.
I'm getting old. Okay, who are they playing?
They are playing Seattle. It's in Green Bay. I love that home field, and I love the 4 points. They're only
You're
giving
getting 4 with it?
No, they're giving 4.
They're giving 4. So you're going with Green Bay. Just hold it right there. What about the 49er game, Steven? We'll do it this way. I changed my mind here. It was so good.
No, I'm with Jake on both of these. Kirk Cousins has been horrific in big games, and now after one win last week, everybody's like, "Oh, he's done it. He's finally done it." But I think the 49ers, they're getting a bunch of guys back. Quan Alexander is coming back. He's been out. Dee Ford is coming back. They're getting 3 starters back on defense. I don't know how good they're going to be, but their defense, when they were healthy, was one of the 2 best with the Patriots the first 10, 12 games of the year. Then they had all these injuries. Now they're back. So I like the 49ers. And I also like Green Bay. I agree with Jake that this might be the last go-round for Aaron Rodgers, who's had only kind of, maybe Jake will tell it better than me, an average to slightly above average season. But I think this is his chance. And, you know, he's got a running back, that Aaron Jones, and he's got a wide receiver. So I think I agree with those 2 picks. I disagree with the Texans pick, but I like the other 2, 49ers and Green Bay.
Okay, well, it's time for Jake's Lock of the Week. Jake's Lock of the Week brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars. Jake, who we talking about?
Well, I've been on the Titans all week. I love the 9 points. It is in Baltimore, but I have not seen Lamar Jackson under this kind of pressure. I think the Titans are going to actually win the game, and I will enjoy the 9 points. So
You're getting a lot of 9-point games here this week.
I
So
will
9.
take the Titans in Baltimore as my lock of the week with the 9 points.
As the Lock of the Week, I know Anthony was getting ready to mortgage the house on your Lock of the Week. All right, Steven, how do you feel about that game?
Close with Jake. I like the Titans to cover. I do not like them to win the game. A lot of it depends to me, and this will be, you know, you'll know more closer to game time, is Mark Ingram going to be able to play? Because Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram together is like nothing the NFL has ever seen in terms of a running quarterback who was 6th in the league overall in rushing. Forget the leading rusher as a quarterback. Lamar Jackson was 6th in the league as a rusher. So if Ingram is healthy, that's just going to be too much for them to stop. The Titans do have Derrick Henry. You saw what he did to the Patriots. So I like the Titans to cover, but I still like Baltimore to not only win the game, but to win the Super Bowl as well. I thought after they destroyed the Patriots, the whole season changed for the Ravens. Beat them 37-20 after they had that historically first 8 games or 9 games, whatever it was, defensively. When I saw that game, I was like, yeah, this is something different. Jake's right, though. You know, Jackson in the playoffs, you don't know, young quarterback, et cetera. But I think, again, beating the Patriots last week was a great win in Foxborough for the Titans, but it wasn't beating the Patriots as we've known them for at least the last 3 years, if not the last 20. So I do like the Titans to cover, but I also like the Ravens to win the game.
What do you think, Jake?
I agree. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. That's the game I'm most excited about this weekend. I can't wait to see Lamar Jackson with the pressure and the playoffs, big game.
What time is that game? I got to make time to watch that. This is one time
Saturday at 8:15.
Saturday at 8:15. I guess I'll be watching football. Unless the Rangers are on, I will be partial. All right, get the wheel, Jake. And we're going to have to, this may take a little bit of time, folks, because we have other teams on it. We've got to get
fixed it.
You fixed it. All righty. Folks, for those of you who are new to Radio Westchester, one of the things we do, we have Jake, we have Steve, we have sports experts who know their football. And what's your record right now?
Regular season, I was 24-20-1. Postseason last week, I was 2-1-1.
Okay, 2-1-1. Now, one of the things we like to do is compare our experts' picks to randomness, and thus we have our own little bizarre wheel. I will spin it for the first game, and then I will take my hands off the wheel, and we'll call it as soon as we can. So those of you on radio who are just listening to audio who can't see the pick, or we'll make sure you know. So stay right there, Stephen. I'm spinning it for the first time. Jake, you'll make the call. The winner is
49ers.
the 49ers. So where's my new card? I just had a new card. So now the 49ers are playing who? Let's
The
go
Vikings, it's in San Francisco, and the 49ers are favored by 7.
Oh, so they're going against you.
No, I picked the.
Oh, so you're with the wheel. All righty. So you're with the wheel. Okay. Game number 2. Jake?
Seattle.
Seattle.
They are in Green Bay, and they are getting 4.
So the wheel is going against you on
Yes.
that one. This is interesting, Stephen. All right. Number 3, game number 3. What do we got?
Chiefs.
Oh, I'm good because that's I love the Chiefs.
It's in Kansas City.
But then again, Steve said he thinks you'll win that bet, but that the Chiefs are going to win the
No,
game.
Steve thinks it's going to be Chiefs big.
Oh, okay.
And
Chiefs.
Yes.
They are giving 9.5 points
Okay.
against the Texans.
And the final. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Back to Seattle, but we'll go the closest.
Closest. Go to the
That
closest.
is the Ravens.
The Ravens. All righty.
In Baltimore, giving 9 points
To who?
against the Titans.
To the Titans, and that's a good game, the Titans. But you're a big Titan man. That's your lock of the week. All right, so the wheel goes with the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Seahawks, and the 49ers. Return the wheel to its place of honor. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we always want to see each week, Stephen, if the wheel, as we pass through 812 here on Radio Westchester, if the wheel can beat the Bomar brains that you and he share. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of these players. You keep mentioning, both of you, that this is Aaron Rodgers' chance. Is there, I mean, I know, how old is he? Do you know?
I believe he's 34.
Okay. Well, a lot of guys have won Super Bowls in their mid-30s, but is the core eroding on that team? Stephen, you could just chime in. You don't have to wait for me to.
No, I don't think the core is. I think their defense has improved the last 2 years. They have the young running back who's very good. And, I still think Aaron Rodgers is a magician. But I don't know. He relies on mobility. When you talk about these guys playing into their late 30s and 40s, like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees, those are not this is for another time, but the Lamar Jacksons and Mahomeses of the world, do you see those guys playing at a high level at 36, 37, 38? I don't, because they're so mobile and they're taking hits now. Rodgers is somewhere in between. He's incredibly mobile. He can make things happen. He can run. So I don't know if he's going to be a guy like Breeze Brady, for example, to be, 37, 38 and slinging it. So I do kind of agree with Jake, the notion that the window is closing on him. And once it closes on him, it closes on the Packers until they get another top-flight quarterback, which is always a crapshoot. See, the Giants and the Jets, for example.
Now, you mentioned earlier Lamar Jackson, and there's another guy that he plays with, I guess, who's a back. Are they that formidable? Ingram. You see that? Are they that formidable?
To me, to Steve Callis, yeah, they're very formidable. Again, when I saw what they did to the Patriots, I was like, yeah, this is a different kind of thing, and they've just taken off. I don't think they've lost a game since then. And even though I did a podcast with a buddy of mine out in Cleveland, and at the end he said, Steve, you never pick these young guys, these new guys. You always want the experienced guys. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, but I've never seen what the Ravens have done with this offense. And don't forget, Jim Harbaugh has always been able to go up to Foxborough and beat the Patriots. He's in the playoffs. He's the one guy who can do it. So I think they have an experience from a coaching perspective, and I think they have just this incredibly different running attack, and it's going to be hard to contain them. And, oh, by the way, the beauty of Jackson now is he can throw it this year, whereas last year he was a little shaky, I thought.
He was shaky, I thought. Now, do they have enough of a staff of receivers where you can't overcompensate? In other words, can they keep the opponents honest?
I think they can, but again, it's based so much. When you look at all these quarterbacks, look at Ryan Tannehill now. Why is he so good after he left Miami? He's not good because he became a great player overnight. He's good because Derrick Henry led the NFL in rushing. We're getting back to the point, I think, look at Dak Prescott. When Elliott runs well, he's great. When Elliott doesn't play or doesn't run well, he's like a fourth-round draft pick. So I think we're returning to the good old days of 10, 15, 20 years ago, where if you had this great rusher, because running backs have been devalued, maybe it's analytics, maybe Jake can talk to that, they've been devalued over the last 10 years. But when you look now, Derrick Henry makes Ryan Tannehill look like an MVP candidate. So when you get to the Ravens, they are so powerful running that I don't think you need a group of elite receivers. I just think you need a good group of receivers. Look at the Patriots last year with what their running game. I think their running game directly led to Brady being better for another year and winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because it kept him honest the other way. All right, let me get to this with both of you, because one of the things that doesn't emerge, this is one of these years where there's no clear favorite. The team I hear talked about all the time, and I'm useful to both of you because not following football as closely as you two do, I pick up what's, if you will, the star, the brightest things. And the thing I keep hearing again and again and again is Lamar Jackson and their running game. Who's favored to win the Super Bowl, and is it that team?
I would think the Ravens are the favorites to win the Super Bowl.
That's correct.
Think the Chiefs are close second. I believe the 49ers are third. But, I mean, I could see Seattle in the Super Bowl. I could see... it's got to be the Chiefs or the Ravens, I would think.
I can tell you the Ravens last week out at FanDuel at the Meadowlands. I just happened to be driving by, Bob, and thought I'd stop in. At FanDuel at the Meadowlands last week, they were 2-1 to win the Super Bowl, which is pretty low before the playoffs essentially start. But they're the big favorites now to win it all. And the Chiefs are second, and the 49ers are third, although I don't remember the exact odds.
I got in on the Titans at 60-1. I put $10 on them, so...
Now, you know what? That's a good value.
That's bet. A nice bet. Now, how much is that driving? How much of your calling the Titans the lock of the week? How much of it is in your gut because you got some money on the outcome?
Just a little bit. I
think
you
like that, Stephen.
I like the 9 points a lot, and I think I like how Tennessee's going to play the game. It's not going to be a shootout. Tennessee's going to grind the clock, and the 9 points is going to be hard.
Okay, a couple of other football things before we go, and let me remind people, it is 8:18. You're listening to the top of the hour segment of Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he, and one of the things we've been doing as we get closer to the football championship is spend more time for those, because so many people care about the football playoffs, and in deference to our listeners, making sure we spend quality time talking about football as we head towards the Super Bowl. Having said that, there are stories out there, football related, that need to be discussed. First of all, what happens with Tom Brady? Steve first.
You know, I'm surprised. Everybody's saying it looks like he's leaving. He finally wants to get paid. I can't see the legacy of Tom Brady. You know, and you'll remember this, Bob. You know, was Joe Montana in a Chiefs uniform, or what was it? Joe Namath, was he in a Rams uniform? Was it? I can't even remember.
Yeah, it was in a Rams uniform.
Walt Frazier in a Cleveland Cavaliers jersey. I mean, I bring those up in my mind. I'm like, I'm not seeing Tom Brady, but people think he's always given them a hometown discount, and that discount wasn't like $1 million a year or $2 million a year. It was like $5 million a year. One of the reasons the Patriots are the Patriots over this whole span is because Brady always took less money. Now, people who hate the Patriots will say, yeah, but his wife makes $25 or $30 million a year. They don't need the money. But I think now it sounds like Brady wants to be valued at what he is. The problem for Brady is, what is he as a 43-year-old quarterback next year? He's been really good in the last 3 Super Bowls. He threw for 505 yards against the Eagles and lost. And last year, I won't say he was a game manager, but to me he's become more of a game manager. And this year, the Patriots didn't have that surrounding talent. Gronkowski retired. They lost their center. They lost their fullback, Devlin. They lost their backup fullback. So I think that Brady's going to wind up coming back to the Patriots because other than Gronkowski, and maybe they'll try and talk him out of retirement, they're going to be the Super Bowl team they were a year ago next year. So I don't see him now, unless there's something behind the scenes. His wife wants to move to fill in the blank. People are talking about the Chargers. I don't see Brady going to the Chargers and making them a Super Bowl team. He would have to go somewhere where he's going to walk in and be an immediate high-end Super Bowl contender. And I don't know what team that is. Maybe Jake has a better idea. So
Jake,
if
what do you
you're
think?
asking me, I think Brady goes back to the Patriots and plays another year.
That's what I think. But
The only rumor that I've heard that makes any sense is that the Chargers are opening a new stadium. They're going to offer Brady a part of the team to come there. They've got seats to sell, so that's the only thing that makes sense to me. If he doesn't
and
go
he's a
back
Southern
to
California kid too, right,
Yeah.
Jake? He's from Southern California, so that does make some sense. So maybe you're right. We'll see what happens. Can you see that, Bob Marrone? Can you
Yes,
see
I
Tom
can.
Brady in the Chargers
no,
jersey?
no, I can't. Good morning, doctor. You want to call in 5 minutes?
Bob's on the other line.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, bye.
Oh, okay, but you know what I'm saying. When you look at these all-time greats who are in different uniforms, why wouldn't you want to save your legacy as opposed
know what?
to
I don't
makes
mind.
sense.
take a flyer?
Yeah, but sometimes it's interesting to see these guys in another uniform. I mean, although I never did get over seeing Michael Jordan in, what was it, Washington Wizards uniform?
Yeah,
That was
that's
trouble.
another
That hurt.
great example.
That one hurt, I must admit. But I saw Duke Snyder, who my favorite Dodger, hit a few home runs for the Mets. I enjoyed it, especially since it was another National
Willie
League team.
Mays.
But you know what? Did either of you read, gentlemen, the long message that he sent, that is Tom Brady, to the fans?
I saw it. I didn't read it.
I read it, and it could have been a legacy thing, but I got the feeling he was coming back, but it was a hedger. It was like it was the greatest place to play, the greatest fans, the greatest this, the greatest that, the greatest coaches. And it had the bite of past tense, but I still, after I read it, I said, he's coming back.
I still think Belichick 3 years ago thought he was going to be done at 39 like most quarterbacks, and he had Garoppolo.
Yeah.
I thought he picked the right guy, and he did pick the right guy, except it sounds like Kraft wanted to keep him, so he traded Garoppolo for nothing, right? A second-round draft pick for Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah.
And look what that's done for the 49ers. So I'd still be surprised. And I don't know if they don't want to pay him. I can't believe that. If he's Tom Brady, don't you give him a blank check if you're Kraft? Look what he's done for him, 6
I
Super
would.
Bowls, and say fill in the number.
But
fill
then, but does
for
it
a year
hurt?
or two.
Does it hurt their finances or salary cap or whatever they use in football?
Well, I'm sure it does, because again, when this is all written about Tom Brady, one of the incredible things is somebody's going to do an article and say, here's the money Tom Brady did not take, and here's the guys who contributed to 6 Super Bowl victories that they signed. More so the last 3, obviously, than the first 3, because he was a young quarterback for the first 3.
Does Belichick ever change hands? Does he ever leave the team?
I had a
another
feeling
team?
I had a feeling he might go to the Giants.
That would have been great.
Yeah,
or will be great.
All right, I want to go down one other path with you before we let you go. And Jake brought this up the other day, and we had another sports guy call in, a great conversation. Where is baseball headed with this cheating scandal, and how can they let Beltran off the hook as we have been reading? Stephen?
I think the problem for baseball is the problem for football, and that is, what are you going to do? Are you going to say the Astros didn't win the World Series? You can fine them like they fined the Patriots $1 million, $2 million, Belichick $500,000, whatever the numbers were. You can do anything you want with that. The way they hurt the Patriots, of course, was with draft picks, and maybe they'll do that in baseball. But unless you're going to, suspend the manager or whoever was behind this for a year or 2, unless you do something drastic like that, it's still going to happen. You brought it up, Bob, last time we talked about it. You think the Astros are the only team to do this kind of stuff? Of course the answer is no. Do you think the Patriots are the only team to do the kind of stuff? Of course not. So I think the problem is the punishment to me can't be too great. Maybe they're going to take away a lot more draft picks now, but the notion they're going to vacate a title, this isn't NCAA basketball 4 years later, right? They vacate Howard Porter, remember Howard Porter in Villanova, their Final Four finish. I think Marcus Camby also when when he was up at UMass, I think it was. And so I don't know what they can do unless they're going to pick one guy, a manager, a player, somebody, and say you're out for a year, you're out for 2 years. That would be the only thing to me that could end this stuff.
Well, certainly. Now, what about the aspect with, aren't they soft-pedaling with Carlos Beltran because he's in New York and is about to be a manager and they don't want to take the opportunity away?
I think that's 100% right. I'm not, that was a weird hire to me. I don't know if you talked about these
things.
But
God, I thought it was... He's a lapdog.
The hire Beltran is, look, it's the Van Wagenen guy wants to have a puppet under him who's going to listen to what he says. And if they call down to the dugout and say, you better pull this pitcher and use that pitcher, I always go back to Art Howe because I thought he was the first of this kind of group. Mm-hmm. And now that's what a lot of these younger general managers are looking for. They don't want, fill in the blank, Buck Showalter, Scioscia. The rumor was that Girardi desperately wanted the Mets, but he had to take the offer he had, which was from the Phillies. And they had Gabe Kapler, who is another one of these. When you listen to Gabe Kapler in Philly after a game, they would lose, and you listen to him talking, it was like they won the game. And you're like, well, hold it now. Where is this guy coming from? And this is Philly. No, this is Philly and New York. This isn't Iowa. Right. This isn't Kansas, Toto. We're in New York, we're in Philly, and it's just a tougher crowd. And I think, of course, a smarter crowd.
Well, I think so, too. I really hope he does well in Philadelphia, and then he's got Didi down there. And didn't he? What do you think, before you, one last thing, and I want to see if Jake has anything else before we let you go and get into medical stuff. Betances. I am so glad the Mets are giving this guy a shot, but I get the sense he must be a lot more fragile than we think because he had a hard time shopping himself around.
Well, a few things. He only got a 1-year deal, so I won't say he's gambling on himself. I think he had no choice. But the other thing, when you're 6'8" or whatever he is, the mechanics, see Randy Johnson early in his career, the mechanics are very, very, if you go bad as a 6'8" pitcher as opposed to a normal-sized pitcher, it's hard to get that back. But you're right. On top of that, with all the injuries, that's a problem, but he's going to have to prove himself to come back from a major injury. And if he pitches well, then he'll be printing money the following year.
Oh, God, yes, he will be printing money. I've told both you guys, my dream is to be Aroldis Chapman, have one pitch and a bad second pitch, which cost them the pennant, by the way.
Correct.
And get $20 million to throw one inning every 2 or 3 days. What a job.
Correct.
Oh my goodness. Jake, what have you to add to this? And then you're gonna wrap up with Jake's picks, and then we'll go to Dr. Victor Sternberg. You're gonna summarize. Anything else for Steven?
No, I just think Betances is no risk, all reward for the Mets. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right, Steve Callis, you know how much we appreciate what you do. Do you have any articles you want us to look at on the WestchesterCountyPress.com?
Well, I do. I have one. If you go to, Roberto, the great Roberto Clemente passed away December 31st, 1972, trying to deliver supplies to hurricane victims, earthquake victims in Nicaragua. And over the years, he's become a great humanitarian, the Roberto Clemente Award. But a lot of people think because he only hit 240 home runs, he doesn't have power. He
Rubbish.
did not have power. And I got a quote from your guy, Duke Snyder, years ago on with Mike and the Mad Dog, who said, "You guys are out of your mind. This guy played in an airport." So I did a long thing on Clemente that's up at Sports Spotlight, if you just click on Sports Spotlight at WestchesterCountyPost.com, about how he did have power. And I have quotes from Sandy Koufax and Rogers Hornsby and 10 other guys that will show, coupled with the fact that they played in Forbes Field, which you probably know, Bob, is kind of like the old Yankee Stadium.
Yep.
It was 457
Yep.
in left center. The proof I used was they left the batting cage on the field during Pirates games at Forbes Field. Clemente played there for 15 and a half years and averaged like 6 home runs a game at home. I think you'll like that article because it's the best researched article I've ever written.
Okay, thank you so very much. Stephen Callis, everyone. He's a sports editor at the Westchester County Post. And before we let our man, well, not that we let him go, but before he recedes into his little cubby hole, Jake, give us your 4 games.
Like the Titans is my lock. I like the Texans, both getting 9 points. I like the 49ers. They are giving 7. And I like the Packers favored by 4 against Seattle.
Thank you very much. Jake's Picks of the Week brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente Padrons and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Can't miss it. You got to see the room in the back. And don't forget, the Friday before the Super Bowl, we'll be doing our show live from Dominic's Fine Cigars. He's already in the dock. We'll be talking with Dr. Victor Sternberg, the longtime host of Politics in Your Health, in just a moment. But first, it is time to share the weather with you. And it's 36 degrees as predicted, getting up to 48. But today, there could be an isolated shower, but mostly just a little warmer. Not really any chance of rain. It's going to average out about 49 today. Tonight, cloudy, fog, chance of a few spotty showers. The temp's getting down to 44. And tomorrow, we start our heat wave. Cloudy with an early morning shower possible. Most of the midday hours are dry with clouds, some fog. Record warmth likely, highs around 60. The previous high on that day, or tomorrow if you will, was in 1975. It was 57. Some showers at night, steady showers, by the way, getting down to 55. Sunday, we'll be in Bermuda. No, we won't be. The weather will be. It'll get up to near 70. 66 is what they're predicting, but it may well reach 70. And the last time the thermometer reached 60 on that day was in 1885. Sunday night, partly cloudy to mostly clear with lows around 39. And wouldn't you know it, we'll have lots of sunshine on Monday. The weather was brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. And the bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Con and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And it's no secret that I admire this man, because he cares about your health, and he genuinely does. And the politics of your health, he had a long-time radio program on several stations, which will be resurrected, when he's done teaching. Politics in Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg. But we are graced to have him for 30 minutes right now, every Friday. Please welcome, without further ado, the longtime host, periodontist by trade, cares about prevention, longtime host of Politics in Your Health, Dr. Victor Sternberg. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Bob. It looks like spring is coming back for a brief brief visit.
Can
We'll all
you
enjoy that, I'm sure.
believe it? We're going to come right out with something that was in the press yesterday and again this morning. There seems to be, or is it just the regular alarm? There seems to be a heightened concern over the flu this season. Are you hearing that? And if so, why
Yeah,
so?
I am that they're concerned about a very virulent strain that's going to have more fatalities than we had last year. And, this is the issue we have of two things. Number one, that the vaccine does not cover all of the possible viruses. Number two, a lot of people don't get the injection. And number three, you're dealing with viruses and bacteria, and they do mutate and become more virulent and more resistant. So this is like playing craps with health every year when the flu comes out.
Now, how effective? I know my doctor, because I'm not a spring chicken, makes me get the flu vaccine every year. How important is that? But if it's a new strain, how useless is it?
Well, the statistics, particularly on children who died 2 years ago from the flu, overwhelmingly did not get inoculated. The percentages were large disparity between inoculated children and uninoculated children. So the flu vaccine at 50%, maybe, plus or minus. But if you give it to enough people, that's a large group that will not get very sick. And in this case, the children, when I looked at statistics on who died, which kid died, it almost overwhelmingly were non-inoculated children. So it is important, and it's important for the young. In fact, some of the more severe cases are in young people because their immune system reacts so violently, because they're very healthy to begin with, to the virus that the immune system overwhelms their body's ability to function. So actually, they have too violent an immune reaction. So that's why young people die, not because of the fact.
There was a story the other day, or maybe only 2 days old now, and I needed to dig into it further because I was looking for the quote-unquote pre-existing conditions, if any. But a 22-year-old died from the flu. That's pretty rare, isn't it? You should be in your absolute prime.
Remember, in 1917, in the trenches of Europe, the greatest number of casualties on the U.S. side were flu victims from the great 1917 flu. These were healthy young men, many of them. And the issue is, again, it gets to the fact that the flu can have more of a violent pushback by the body. The body, it's not necessarily the flu killed the child or the adult. It's their immune system became so energized that they got pneumonia, their lungs filled up with fluid, and they died. And so it's not necessarily debilitated people. Debilitated people die often of pneumonia in hospitals or from other illnesses. But the flu is deadly from the time a child is 1 or 2 years old right up to their teen and young adult years.
Well, I tell you, the last time I had the flu, I couldn't believe how sick I was. You feel very, very vulnerable when you get hit with that. Doctor, another story we wanted to ask you about, and we did this story this morning, out in California, I think it is. And I just want to find it here. I had it among my stories. They're looking to buy, if you will, or invest in their own generic drug program. Now, how can government do that and not fly in the face of competing with business? Have you heard anything about that?
I have heard thoughts of that, just like we had cases in California and in Vermont where they wanted to have their own healthcare system. All these things are wonderful in theory. Problem comes down into the issue, the actual reality and the legality. I reserve judgment because California wants to do a lot of things, some of which they can, and some they cannot. So let's put that on the back burner right now, Bob.
Okay, we will do that. I want to go to vaping again a little bit.
Yes.
The president tries to help. The local authorities try to help. Businesses push back. And now they're saying that teenagers are getting addicted to nicotine all over again. How did we get here?
You're funny, Bob. How did we get here? The moment the FDA allowed electronic cigarettes to be legalized, and they went and they didn't spend a lot of time testing them in all environments for a long period of time. The moment that happened, they released it to the public. We opened Pandora's box, which we will have a very hard time putting back in the box. I'm sorry, Bob. In fact, a 15-year-old boy died yesterday. It was reported, a 15-year-old. There's nothing surprising about this, Bob. We've been through this with opioids. We've been through this with cigarettes for the last, the 1964, the Surgeon General concluded that smoking leads to early death. Okay? 1964. We still sell cigarettes. Okay? It seems that we don't have the ability on a political level to deal with issues that have strong economic impacts on certain groups of businesses. So we equivocate all the time. And the result is, this is just another example. Cigarettes, opioids, and now vaping. And soon marijuana. Marijuana will be all over the place, and then we'll discover down the road that we have a lot of kids that have problems. And it's a very powerful indictment of our political paralysis and the undue influence of business interests on political decisions.
Doctor, another issue. I saved up a whole bunch of little things for you today, and then, of course, we'll spend time on what your issues are. I read a story, and I wish I lost track of the name of the drug, but evidently there is some headways being made on some new medications that are not addictive, that are not for pain management. Have you heard that? Is there anything on the horizon? What's out there?
Well, there are things being developed, non-addicting, the use of the anti-inflammatories, those which are non-steroidal, have been very effective. But they do have some GI effects in some people. I've talked to you many times that I don't use any narcotics, and I haven't used it in 14 years. So I think that, in my opinion, there are people who do have medical conditions that require long-term opioids of some sort. The problem is many of these people get addicted emotionally or physically. It's still, this is hopefully we'll find something. There's certainly a lot of research. The last 10 years, what's happened has prompted drug companies to look into research. The problem again, Bob, and I brought this about antibiotics, there has to be a profit at the end of this. There has to be something with the ability of companies to spend lots of money in research.
Financial incentives.
And charge enough money for the drugs. And they have to be used long term, because coming out with a pill you take 5 days is not going to make a lot of money for a drug company unless the drug costs $1,000 a pill. So we get in this conundrum of the cost of developing drugs, the enormous barrier the FDA puts up very often, and the ability to make a profit. And these are conflicting issues that require some adults in the room that don't have a financial interest in the outcome, and we don't have adults in the room without financial or political interest.
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me, speaking of that, and this is not one of those things where we're bashing on President Trump. He certainly has his hands full with a lot of other stuff. It's both parties and the whole system. But although in this case we do have to put the Republicans, I guess, under the microscope, they wanted to repeal and replace. Now, John McCain stopped that the last time. But really, I don't get the sense that anyone, even candidates for the Democratic Party, no one's really looking at health care again. They're just letting it slide by yet for another decade. I mean, we do have what's left of Obamacare, and it's saving some people. But at the end of the day, we're not making any progress, it seems to me, anyway.
Well, the Democrats, at least the ones more on the left, proposed a complete overhaul of our system. They haven't the specific to frighten Americans. And on the right, the Republicans are now in their fourth year of ruling this country, the Senate and the President. And they have not repealed, nor have they replaced, nor have they come up with any good alternatives to what we have. I believe that the party doesn't really have an interest in significantly impacting our healthcare system.
Why did they want to kill Obamacare then?
Because it represented a system whereby originally, remember, it was a mandate, so that was taking away the freedom of individuals.
Understood.
They don't want government providing economic help to people who can't buy insurance. It's about this whole view of I was listening to Ted Cruz debate Bernie Sanders, and the Ted Cruz's view was every American should have the availability of health care insurance, not the ability to pay for it, the availability of it, the opportunity to buy it. Bernie Sanders said, well, they should have the opportunity to buy it, but if they can't afford it, it's irrelevant. So the view on the right is that America doesn't owe Americans health care insurance. We did it with Medicare because of the Great Society and Medicaid because what went on in the 60s. But they've drawn a line in the sand, and it has to be this view that the government is going to take away your private insurance, and healthcare will be like socialized. It's the socialist versus the I guess you'd call them the free market people.
But Obamacare was a combination that really got a lot of its roots from Republican ideas of not just giving it away.
Well, what they did, they subsidized people.
Yes. Yes.
The largest number of people who got covered under Obamacare were covered by expansion of Medicaid. These people, they raised the amount of money you could make to get Medicaid.
Well, that's true, yes.
And that represented an enormous, so what does that do? That increases the federal budget. It puts a burden on states, which now have to contribute to Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And so the free marketers say, listen, the government's going to take more money out of the federal budget, take more money out of the state budgets. And so that was their opposition. Their opposition is theoretical and political views of what the government should be doing for healthcare. By the way, there's an interesting survey came out. You'll find this interesting. They surveyed Republicans, and they compared the views of the top 1% of earners to the middle earner Republicans, people who were more blue collar. Over 50% of middle income Republicans felt that health care for all should be affordable. Of the top 1% earners, only 15% felt health care should be available and affordable by all Americans.
Doctor, in the interest of plain speak, do the Ted Cruzes care if people die because they can't afford health insurance? The answer has to be no.
Well, Ted Cruz, of course I care. We have emergency rooms and people can go in and get health care.
But that's after it's too late. If you don't get certain scans, you're going to die from things you don't have to die from. I'm preaching to the choir here, but...
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation, Bob, because, I'm looking at charts on the cure of different cancers in this country compared to other countries.
Yes.
And that's a good segue into what I'd like to talk a little about.
Please do, but let me remind people, of course it is. I just had some questions for you. We're talking with Dr. Victor Sternberg. He's a periodontist by trade, but a committed to prevention more than anything. And, of course, always been concerned how the politics of this country affects your health, and thus his long-time reign as the host of Politics in Your Health, soon to return. Continue. Yes.
So, two things. The great debate is whether the European model will provide better health care and better outcomes than the American model. That's been the debate. Mm-hmm. And the European model, provides health care for all. Everybody pays higher taxes, accepts it, and they don't have to come up with a huge premium. It just comes out of their paycheck. The argument is that American care is better, therefore we should not go that way. And this debate is raged, and that's really the essence of the debate, that the government can take care of people better than people can take care of themselves. Interesting enough, there was a comparative study that came up, the cost of procedures done in America versus European countries. These are modern European countries. And they took one procedure, an angiogram and a stent being placed in an artery. In Europe, the average fee was $6,000 for the procedure. The one-day hospital visit was $6,000. In the United States, it was $36,000, 6 times. Okay, same stent, same procedure, all put by trained doctors. Okay, one of the things that we cannot seem to discuss is why are we spending so much more money in the area of large parts of medicine and getting equal outcomes or similar outcomes? That's one of the questions. And this is related to my son. My son went in for a one-day visit at NYU, and they they did angioplasty in his legs, where he has this constant problem with arteries blowing up. And it was, the one-day visit was $55,000. They had 20 patients in the unit, so 20 times 55,000. That's what the hospital produced in one unit, one day. Okay. Now, we can talk forever about why healthcare is so expensive. We can talk about tort reform, because how much medicine is practiced defensively? How much does that cost? It doesn't exist anymore. We can talk about the cost of becoming a physician, how much money we pay here for a young doctor to go through a college medical school and push himself through a residency, versus Canada or other countries where there's no real expense to be paid. Doctors have very little debt, so we can talk about that issue. And then we can talk about pharmaceutical companies, which can charge more money here than they can in Europe. All these things are on the table, but we don't want to talk about them because they all get very complicated, and you're then going to ruffle somebody's feathers. You're going to ruffle the fees that doctors charge, the incomes of physicians, what hospitals earn, what drug companies earn, about free college for all. These are all issues that are fundamental to how our country will operate going forward. But we cannot seem to have the conversation, which is the nexus of it. How can we lower the cost of health care? You know from my views, Bob, that a huge percentage of health care is due to lifestyle.
Right.
I mean, and we don't address that at all. The vaping issue, those 2,700 people that were put in the hospital for vaping, what did it cost us? How many millions of dollars have we paid because people vape? Now there's 57 families that are mourning a lost one. Or my father, who died at 65 years old from heart disease, never watched my family grow up. Or all these people who have had lung cancer. I mean, what is the cost of lung cancer in this country? I mean, what is
it's
the
enormous.
Cost of, so we don't seem as a nation where we have this aversion by taking strong positions of how people should live their lives because we are entitled to freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you cannot tell me that I can't have a gun. You can't tell me I can't smoke. You can't tell me I can't be obese. You can't tell me anything. Okay, that's the attitude of our free democracy, liberty. Okay, the problem is that all of those rights have an enormous price, and it's making it difficult for the rest of us to afford health care. That's not a minor issue, but again, no conversation about people changing behavior. That's un-American.
Well, Doctor, I'm just amazed by some of this. And then you have people pushing back, like someone I greatly respect. In fact, she couldn't be with us today. I wanted to have a debate with a colleague of ours who has a degree in public health, Janelle Albritton. She posted something the other day on Facebook. And I don't want to be overly critical because I want to talk to her first. But how telling people that they have to inoculate their kids when they don't want to is a form of fascism. Now, she wasn't saying that herself. She was passing that along as a part of the zeitgeist out there. And how do we keep people from having those? I mean, I understand. It has to do with what you just said about freedom. But doesn't freedom end when it jeopardizes someone else?
Listen, I should be able to drink. If I can drink and drive, and I should be allowed to. No one's going to take that right away from me. And I may not hit anybody, but on the other hand, if I hurt somebody else, that freedom has some adverse effects upon people I kill or injure. A civilized society cannot have a Wild West mentality. And there are people who take it to the extreme. There's a revolt going on down in Virginia. The Virginia legislature passed, they're all Democrats now, the Democrats controlling the House, passed legislation requiring mandatory background checks, limitation on magazines, and a ban on assault rifles. Well, the people in Virginia have been massing at the State House, claiming that they're willing to fight a civil war, a real war, to defend their rights and have no one impugn their ability to have assault rifles, large magazines, or require background checks. So this is the clash. You have this very vocal, powerful minority that has undue influence on the politics of our country.
It exists everywhere. Doctor, I was at a board meeting the other night, and I wanted you to wax on this a little bit if you can, about a board that I'm on that deals with mental health. And do you know now, if you present to a hospital, even with suicidal, now they usually can't find a bed for you because they don't have beds for that. But then they'll set you up with a psychiatrist. Do you know how many weeks you have to wait? About 8.
How many? 8 weeks.
How does a suicidal person wait 8 weeks? And there's no psychiatrist now takes very few will actually take your insurance. You have to pay cash. People can't afford this, but yet we see suicide rates going up at an alarming rate. And I have a story in front of me. They've pretty much proven that they've gotten so sophisticated with technology that they're creating technology addictions now. Which is why I resent my phone so much. Remember that old comic strip, There Ought to Be a Law. What can we do about this? Or individuals have to start taking care to realize that they're being manipulated every day and that in terms of mental health, there are very few things you can do about it anymore.
Bob, you know what? It's an interesting discussion about technology, both from the electronics that we're talking on right now, all the way up to developing hypersonic missiles that can wipe out a country in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What you've done is you have taken a human race that is not evolved emotionally and barely intellectually, and you've allowed them to have access to incredible technology. So, in the most extreme is like letting a 5-year-old play with a rifle or a gun. We don't want to deal with the fact that we are, in many respects, an immature
we're
race
still
of people.
prepubescent as a race. I don't think we realize that. We think we're at the
And-
apex.
And unfortunately, that prepubescent has access to vaping, to opioids, to marijuana, and to guns. So why would you expect anything good to happen? I don't know if it alarms you that Russia has developed this hypersonic missile that can go 27 times the speed of sound and reach us in minutes and not be able to be shut down. Do you know what's going to happen now, Bob? We're going to do this.
We're going to have to develop one. Yes, I know.
Chinese will have it. So now we have a world where it almost seems whoever shoots first wins.
Well,
And
that's
so
always
it-
been the great fear. The great fear has always been the preemptive strike using nuclear weapons, and now it'll be something else. So then we have to develop the ability so that we can do the same to the other, and that's it's called mutually assured destruction. It's crazy. What else do you have, Doctor, and how are things going?
Well, first of all, I want to just read a little study. You might have picked it
Please.
up. It compares. This gets into the argument about our healthcare system versus others. Interesting enough, a study was done on cancer survival. In America, they compared America, France, and the U.S. UK, France, and the U.S. And they picked five cancers. Okay. In the UK, the doctors basically are employed by the government. The Medicare system there is really in financial trouble, and they don't seem to make it work very well, although they all get health care. In France, it's kind of a system that's a bastardized system where everybody gets a card. There's no, you pay something, but the system is insurance companies pay for it, but the insurance companies are nonprofit. And the U.S., we have what we have. So they looked at 5 survival rates on liver cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, and stomach cancer, all very serious cancers. In pancreatic cancer, the number of people living 5 years is about twice the number in these other countries. In lung cancer, it's about 30% longer. In brain cancer, it's about 40% longer, and similar for stomach cancer. So in the one with the lowest survival rate long term was England. The one with the longest survival rate was the U.S. Okay, so we have here some interesting evidence about when you get. Now, interesting enough, Bob, the lifespan in America across the board is not longer; it's shorter than many countries. But when it comes to survival of cancer, we seem to throw everything at it more than any other country, and we have longer survival rates.
But Doc, when we do a study like that, shouldn't we be breaking it down though by socioeconomic classes? For example, the 1%. What is there? How long do they live after it?
They live about 10 years longer, and generally, look, there are doctors in New York City who are concierge practitioners who are probably the finest doctors in their profession. You have to pay them tens of thousands of dollars to be their patient. You're probably going to get better care. You're going to go to special surgery if you need orthopedics. They don't accept Medicare. You'll be right at Sloan Kettering getting state-of-the-art treatment. I mean, there's no doubt that people who have access to have the affordability, can afford things that others can't, will have a longer lifespan. On the other hand, let me just give you the other argument. People that are more successful in life, generally, unless they inherit the daddy's money, generally are more disciplined, are more health conscious, exercise more, eat better, don't drink and take drugs as much. So it becomes the 1% has other behaviors, not just the fact.
Well, of course, but that was my point. That wealth, culture, all of those things matter. But we have, and see, I want to go back to your earlier argument, where we have a government and a major party in this country willing to let people die and have bad health in the name of freedom. Those numbers drag down the average drastically.
Yes, that's right. if you look, it's very interesting because when you look at statistics, even you look at things like scores on international exams across the world comparing us, or SAT scores. Well, you can look at certain school districts that are doing amazingly well. But if you take the mean and put all of these other factors, it suddenly brings down the average score. We have a huge gap in America, and it seems to be not closing. And the question is, are we willing to accept the gap in exchange for freedom? So don't bother me, don't take too much money from me, don't tell me what to do. Are we willing to accept that gap as a result of perhaps not spending twice as much money in Harlem for education that we spend in Scarsdale? The answer is we're willing to accept it. There's not, we have to get back to the mentality of a nation, whether it be Iraq, whether it be America, whether it be China. There's a collective mentality, and then there are people that argue about it. And we have not dealt with health. By the way, 10 years into Common Core, there's been no improvement in education in this country.
Nope.
No significant improvement.
What we have, the left want to change the bar so that it looks better, but it won't be better. And
Bob, the passing score on the Regents in geometry last year, the raw score was 40%. A lot of kids passed, but they didn't learn geometry. I mean, you unfortunately, the argument about unequal outcomes is very complicated, and it cannot be put into a racial basket or into any basket. It has
because
to be
it makes the tail wag the dog. Necessarily so.
But it should be a priority of a country, as it was in Finland. Finland had a terrible educational system, and they made a commitment to change it completely, and now they have one of the best educational outcomes in the world. But they collectively, as a society of Finnish people, decided that this was necessary, and they did it. We can't even find a way to deal with any issue, and even issues like, why should background checks be so difficult if 90% of Americans want them for guns? But we can't do it. So you tell me, are we a nation now that's reached a real gridlock that because of our conflicting interests,
yes,
that would really go down the other way?
Yes, because we're in an interesting conflict. People do what works, and morality be damned. And unfortunately, being locked into one abject side of the political spectrum or another works when it comes to getting funded for running for office, B, it works during primaries. So what we have is a system that is failing itself. We probably need an updated constitution, and we need to get money out of politics somehow. I don't know how we do that, but yeah, we have a system that's now flawed, and now we're feeling the effects of it. No question.
If you were running a company, and suddenly your profits were going down, employees were quitting, you couldn't get good employees, your products weren't being bought, you would have a meeting with the board, and you sit down and say, "Listen, we got a problem." Well, America is like a huge company, and the problem is the board of directors don't like each other, they don't talk to each other, and they have different interests. And as long as that continues, we're going to muddle through, because we have a lot of extraordinary people in this country. But that's not because our government does a good job. It's because we, the people, are individuals, you and I, and all of us, who care. That's
and, Doc, toxic things work. I mean, again, I brought up the left. I'm picking on both sides these last several weeks. The left has well, if Johnny can't pass the test, lower the score. If Johnny can't pass the test, pass him anyway, move him to the next grade. We have the right that does the kinds of things that it does with health care, and they never the twain shall meet.
How about eliminate the test? More and more colleges want to eliminate the SAT scores.
Why?
Because they are also skewed towards white and Asian children who do much better.
But they're no. They're not skewed towards those kids. It's even in language. Those kids do better on the tests because of the way they were brought up, and for good or ill, and because of the exposure they've had to education. What needs to be done, it seems, in the earlier years, since the families don't do it, the schools need to change the way they educate these children, yes, but they still need to be able to pass the test. Doctor, you want somebody, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, would you want someone working on your teeth who couldn't pass the course you teach right now in dentistry?
Bob, you hit a nail on the head. it worries me that that viewpoint. This is the conflict we have. We have to decide that we are either a nation where you're entitled to the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, or you're entitled to having happiness. And the issue becomes fundamentally whether you're going to allow the freedom that you and I have to permeate every aspect of society, or whether we're going to make decisions to put more effort into making a more level playing field for everybody. And this is a conversation that we need to have, and we certainly can't have on the radio in an hour. And it's not an easy conversation because people will easily become defensive and become offended. So the conversation rarely happens.
Yeah, well, we need to have the conversation, Doctor, and that's one of the reasons I started this radio station, so we can have frank talk. Doctor, I've got to get ready for my next guest, Dr. Victor Sternberg, the host of Politics in Your Health. You'll be hearing from him again soon. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you, Bob. Look forward to it. Bye-bye.
All righty. Take care. We know he's trying to reach us, and that would be, of course, Damon Jones. Damon Jones is the publisher of the Black Westchester magazine. We're going to take a look at the time. It's 9:03. We're going to take a short break and be sure we can accommodate our next guest. We'll be back with the weather. Stay right there. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone as we enter our long-form interview phase. Mornings with Bob Marrone is brought to you by Radio Westchester, and this week and this morning it's brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit UHGC.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, plug-in virtual reality, and Dominic's Cigars. Stay right there, please. All righty. We've lined up our next guest. We're sure that's him calling, and if it's not, I made a big mistake, but I didn't even bother screening it because he's a very responsible man. In fact, he started a newspaper along with A.J. Woodson that is the go-to source of news in Mount Vernon, but also covers the heavier issues in Westchester County. And my guest is Damon Jones. You know him he's on various radio stations from time to time. He's the publisher of Black Westchester magazine. Of course, a regular on our broadcast is his colleague, A.J. Woodson, the editor-in-chief. But this is an interesting man. In addition to his publishing business, he also has been a corrections officer, a senior corrections officer for several years here in Westchester County. He is the head of Blacks in Law Enforcement in Westchester County. It would be fair to call him a civil rights activist. And on the more humorous side, at least when I talk to him in a moment, this man whose family owns a cupcake producing outfit or outlet, if you will, is now I'm called a vegan. I can't wait to talk to him, plus with all the things going on in our world with corrections officers, et cetera, and with the new bail law. He has a lot to offer on so many fronts. Please welcome Damon Jones. Good morning, Damon.
Good morning, but Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, and it's always a pleasure to have you. Now, you know, AJ dropped the dime on you, and you got to answer for the fact he says you're a vegan now?
Yeah, actually plant-based. I I left all meat. Don't eat any meat, chicken, or fish. Strictly fruits and vegetables. And I did that to after watching my mother suffer from heart disease, diabetes, and all other illnesses. I noticed that in the end, I was taking some of the same medications that she was. And I thought to myself, well, you know, this might be the end result. So what do I do to try to reverse this or help my situation? And I started to doing a lot of research on plant-based dieting and living a plant-based lifestyle, and then actually reversing diabetes. And
well, did you have diabetes? Did you have diabetes? Now you're a
Yes,
big guy,
yeah,
but I
I
thought
am
always been great. I did
I'm a
not know
type
that.
2.
Type 2.
Yes,
Now,
I'm a
is it
type 2
working?
diabetic.
The guy I was
Yes,
just
it
talking
is.
to would love to hear this. I should have
Yeah,
told him
yeah,
this.
yes, it is. I as far as my sugar, I was a 8 in 2018. I tested a 8.6, and just December, I was a 6.8.
Mm-hmm.
So my sugar went down. Anything over 6.4, you're classified as a diabetic. I have 4 more points to go. And I've lost almost 30 pounds.
That's wonderful. Now, by the way, have you lost muscle mass, and what are you doing for protein?
No, I haven't lost muscle mass. That's a myth.
Well, no, I know, but what about protein though? What kinds of
I eat a lot of legumes. I eat a lot of beans, different beans, and then you have the natural good fats like avocado.
Sure, yeah.
You just have to understand the chemistry of the food that you're eating, and eat accordingly. It's a little harder because of the fact that you actually have to make your food. And that's the hardest part, because you have to take time out of the day and actually prepare a meal.
Mm-hmm.
I think as Americans, as our culture, this fast mobile culture,
mm-hmm.
this ready to go culture, we have gotten away from one of the basics mainstays of healthy is actually eating and preparing our meals.
Now, what happens when you stop by your daughter's store and you see the wonderful cupcakes she's making? You have to turn your back on that now.
Yes, but she's vegan also.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yes, and we do, and she went vegan also, and we do have vegan cupcakes.
No kidding. Now, how do you do that? Because you got milk in there. What do you use instead of like soy milk?
Well, you use like almond milk or soy milk, and there's different ways to make even like complete dairy free with no milk at all, with no type of milk at all. So, I don't eat. You're right. I don't eat any type of dairy products or cheese. And it was very interesting. And I use my mother as a prime example. I think this was a lesson that, God blessed me to learn, is that even in hospitals, when they know that dairy products causes mucus and phlegm, and then when you sitting there in the hospital from bad asthma, COPD, heart disease,
mm-hmm.
Lung disease, and then they bring you a pizza for lunch.
I know. Well, you're right. Well, good for you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And it's crazy. So, I'm working on a whole thing called Plant-Based Power, plantbasedpower.org, where we are going to try to combat obesity in communities of color.
Well, you know what? I am, as you know, now I'm an older man, but a middle-aged athlete who has to watch what I eat, and I lost some 20 pounds, but I don't have the greatest diet in the world. And the advice you give, now you were an athlete in your youth, I know, you still have an athletic physique, so and you're a big guy. This had to be a hard transition for you.
Well, I mean, it was, but when you want to live,
that's yeah.
When you want to live and you want to not have these type of ailments. When I started, and people don't believe it, when I started Westchester County Department of Corrections in 1990, I was 190 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
190 pounds. I wasn't even.
It's funny.
200 pounds.
I just want to interrupt for a moment because I was just going to say, you're like many of us, a hardworking man with a stressful job, eating on the run, et cetera, over the
Exactly.
years. So that by way of context, continue. So it's 1990. You started the Department of Corrections. You're 190 pounds. Go ahead.
Right, and I ballooned up to 270.
Jesus.
So my goal is to get to 210, 200.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another 20, 25 pounds to go. So, but I mean, we have to understand the importance, and I say all the time, because the black community, the brown community, especially the black community, we lead in every chronic disease that there is, but we do not talk about it enough. We do not discuss it enough in our communities, in our churches. And
why
even
not?
the studies show.
Do you know who does? By the way, interestingly, have you ever been to any of the Seventh-day Adventists? They do their, because I used to do a show when I was on WVOX. It's way when I first started, and I was like just the announcer who brought the show on and then worked the board. They have a church here in New Rochelle. They talk about diet and vegetables all the time. Very interesting.
Well, that's
people.
part of their religion.
Yeah,
That's part of their religion.
Uh-huh.
There's something that's called blue zones, right?
Yeah.
So what blue zones are throughout the world is where the most healthiest people live.
Yeah.
Right, and they called it blue zone. There's only one blue zone in America.
Where?
And that's the main state where the Seventh-day Adventists come out.
Now that makes some sense. All right, so we're on the same page. I want to get you back on where you were going because you talked about the communities of color. Why isn't it talked about in communities of color? Because we read about it. We read about the blood pressure. An African American's more likely to have high blood pressure,
right.
as I do myself. Why is it not talked about?
You know what? I don't know. And I think we don't talk about soul food not being good for us. Because it's part of our culture.
Yeah.
Part of our culture to be big boned. We talk about that and our culture in eating soul food, which is actually slave food because
of course
it derived from when black people were slaves in America.
Yeah.
We was left with the scraps.
That's where oxtail comes from. I didn't know that.
Exactly.
I used to, again, It's funny what I learned doing the radio. I did a show for this guy who's a vegan out of the Bronx. And he talked about it. Yeah, that's right.
That food is bad for us.
Well, same thing in Europe. In the Italians, one of the reasons they got into sausage is they were left with beaks and whatever was left when the upper class took the good food. Yeah, make sausage out of this. Throw a couple of mice in, I guess. I don't know. But continue, please. This is interesting. Damn. Continue.
Well, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it in the black community, and because our children are growing, our children are being obese at 12, 13, 15 years old. And we have to get our young people to stop going to the fast food restaurants all the time and get our families back into the habit of cooking healthier foods, putting more vegetables in their meals, cutting back on the meat and the poultry and even the fish, and educate. It's all about education. It's all about people knowing what this food is actually doing to you. But it's all tied in, right? It's all tied into the pharmaceutical companies, all tied into the healthcare. It's all tied in, we're going to jump right into Mount Vernon Hospital. They close a hospital in the black community.
We're going to get to that next. I just want you to take a step back, though. My guest is Damon Jones, and we're talking about a number of issues. He's the publisher of Black Westchester Magazine, Dad of Blacks in Law Enforcement in Westchester County. He's a civil rights activist, but also now he's getting involved in the health of his community and starting out on his own. You mentioned an organization or a website. I want to help you promote this thing. Tell me now how you're turning this into. I want to give you time for this, and we can, we'll do more.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. The website is called plantbasedpower.org.
I'll be signing into it today.
It's plantbasedpower.org. It's up. It's running. It's still a work in progress. People, because a lot of information. We talk about food being addiction. How do we combat
especially
food
sugar
addiction? Right, and I give the Power 8 steps to combat food addiction. We are addicted to sugar. We are addicted to fast food. We are addicted to potato chips.
Don't
French
mention
fries.
potato chips, please. I am the world's biggest potato chip addict. I can eat them to a funnel. Oh God, yeah. Continue.
Hey,
I'm
look,
sorry,
look.
Damon.
I'm not perfect. I'm no different than anybody else. I suffer from the addiction too. But the whole thing is just to recognize it, and how do we do better with our lives, right? I'm not telling everybody to stop eating meat and poultry, but you know what? Have meat just once a week, right? Have meat, or just have meatless Mondays. Start somewhere, right? If you cut down eating a couple of meals of meat a week, you put on years to your life.
And by the way, don't do what I did. This is to share with you, because I gained pounds I should not have gained, and I very slowly and responsibly dieted well and lost 20 pounds. So one night I go home by myself, and I was really hungry, and I looked in the cupboard, and I saw a box of spaghetti and some sauce. Well, I made a pound of spaghetti. Guess what I did? Take one big guess what I did with that pound of spaghetti. I ate the whole pound. I couldn't stop. I was like a crazy person. And needless to say, the next couple of days, it was like I put concrete in the middle of myself.
Yes.
So it was a meatless day, but I had more starch and sugar. Oh, man. But it was lovely. It was like, I was like, you could have just put me in a corner and put a med hat on me and put me to sleep. I was... But I guess this is really important what you're doing now as a practical matter, because people are listening. Some are going to turn, oh man, I'm not doing that. I'm going out and getting McDonald's. Or Bob just made me want to go eat a pound of spaghetti. What dishes that are so-called vegan do? I mean, like if I said to you, I want you to go home right now, Damon Jones, and make the most tasty vegan meal that you enjoy, what would it be?
Stuffed clamshells.
But stuff? What do you mean? Just stuff? What good is the clamshell if there's no clam in there?
Well, you stuff. Stuff the you get the dairy-free pasta clamshells.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I stuff them with sautéed spinach and
I love sautéed spinach. You got me.
And mushrooms. Sautéed spinach with mushrooms. And I sprinkle on a little. They even have dairy-free vegan cheese that melts very well. So I saute the spinach and mushrooms.
Sounds good.
And then I drop a little of the dairy-free cheese in it, and then I stuff the shells, and then I make some homemade tomato sauce. And I put it in the oven, and that's my favorite dish.
That sounds really good. Have you ever had, by the way, this is an Italian dish, and we growing up as an Italian kid, my grandmother used to make it. It's escarole. She used to call it scatole, but occasionally I'll go over to Modern, and I'll just get a bowl of sautéed escarole. It's really good. It's even more, I love spinach. It's more tasty than spinach. And sometimes you can get it with beans. You may want to try that since you're on your vegan diet.
Great.
Just ask for, and not the
what
soup.
I had the other day is real quick for people. They could take red beans, chop a little onions, season some red beans, and put it over some either brown rice or quinoa, and then cut some pieces of avocado.
But by the way, if you really are in a rush, so you got me into this now. This is when I was losing weight. They have those steam meals. There's a steam meal. It's not quinoa. It was couscous and spinach with olive oil. That's pretty good. You put it in the microwave for 4 minutes. The bag blows up. Cut it up. It's really good for you. You're getting me into these meatless meals.
No. I mean, it's real. It's real good.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to be creative. I'm not. You have to be creative. But my favorite meal of the day, to be honest with you, is a nice big salad.
Yeah, you can get into that. I understand that. But, this is normally where I would kid you and say, well, there goes a rainforest. But
let me tell you, they see the bowls. Oh, my God, this guy, He's not kidding. Like, it's a big bowl of salad.
Here goes a rainforest, folks. They're worried about what's happening in the Amazon. Damon Jones is the reason. You never cease to amaze me. I got such a kick out of it a few years ago when your wife and daughter went into the cupcake business, because of all the people I know, for you to own a business or be involved in a business that's called the Cupcake Cutie Boutique, I've never really gotten over that. Hey, listen, what I'd like you to do is to feel free to come on and talk about this even regularly. I think you'll help a lot of people.
Oh, not a problem.
Now, have you helped AJ? I saw a picture of him. He lost some weight.
Yeah, AJ's doing good, man. He's doing good. He's getting there. He's not vegan yet, but he's doing good. He's walking. He's eating. He's eating better. He's eating great. And that's a great thing.
Because what you said earlier about living longer. He was a couple of years ago. He got pretty ill. And he is,
yes,
unless I am very wrong, and I talk to him every week, and we've met each other several times, as you know. He's one of the sweetest human beings on the planet, and
absolutely,
and the world wants to keep this guy around, and
absolutely.
So stay on his case, and I love this stuff. Hey, let's get into it. Let's talk a little politics too. I got one more question for you, and I'll even tell you a story. When I went back to hockey to get in shape, you know what? For me, it was I hit my mid-40s, and the doc says you got high cholesterol, you've got high triglycerides, and you got high blood pressure. Geez, I better get in shape. So over a course of time, as you just did, I lost 30 pounds, and then I was watching a movie called Home Alone 2. I don't know if you saw it. I'm sure everybody saw it.
Yeah.
But there's a scene when Macaulay Culkin is in front of a limousine with a pizza, and the box is steaming, and then he opens it up, and the pizza is steaming. This is 20 some odd years ago. It left this much of an impression on me. I dove into the box. I almost bit the television. What do you do when that happens to you? When you see a freshly baked pizza?
I try not to go around.
God.
I try not. I try not to go around it. I mean.
But I was watching a movie. It was innocent. I felt like a guy who's been in prison for 30 years just opened a Playboy centerfold. I was
exactly.
Oh
exactly.
God.
It's rough, man. And let me tell you, it's rough because Pete. The cheese, let me tell you, cutting the cheese out is the most hardest, and that's how you know, and that's how you know the food is addictive, right?
Oh, God,
because the worst thing was leaving the cheese alone, because I love cheese. I was a pizza eater.
I love
pizza. I loved any Italian dish with cheese in it.
No.
I loved it. And,
like a nice chicken parm hero. I should
what?
stop.
Oh my God, man! Let me tell you, I don't even go. I have a favorite. I have a favorite restaurant in Purchase, Italian restaurant in Purchase. Trattoria in Purchase.
Yeah.
And I used to go there like 3-4 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right, 3-4 times a week. I'm sorry, and I take my mother there too for lunch all the time.
Uh-huh.
And now, to go in there, and sit and see the food and smell the food, it's like torture, right? It's literally like torture.
Oh, I understand. Like I love chicken parm, and I have to avoid it because I'm in, and I'll go in and I'll actually get the sautéed spinach or the sautéed escarole, which is really good, and then you get the beans in it, and you got your. But you know what I'll do sometimes, because when I'm dieting, I'll get a side of meatballs without the bread. But okay, I'm going to stop because you and I are both going to leave this. We're going to leave this interview and run out to a restaurant and break every rule. It's 9:26. Right? Yeah, 9:26. We're talking with Damon Jones, as you now know, has many interests and avocations and vocations. He's an eclectic man. He's the publisher of Black Westchester magazine, which has done just an incredible job of covering Mount Vernon, as no group has ever done before, and also the issues we care about all across Westchester. He has been a long-time corrections officer. He's the head of Blacks in Law Enforcement here in Westchester County, a civil rights activist, and of course, the member. He's part of a family that owns a cupcake concern. So try and reconcile all this. As we get into, I couldn't wait to talk to you for so many different reasons, and we'll get into the new mayor in Mount Vernon. But you probably have opinions, or at least can give us some insight. And again, because it's your profession, we don't want you to we don't want you
Right.
to get yourself in any trouble with the higher ups. But what happened in Manhattan that they don't have pictures of Epstein? And if those guys were working for you who weren't doing their job, or at least that's what we're told, they were sleeping on the job. What are your responsibilities when you have a suicidal inmate?
Well, you first of all, they're supposed to be on some type of close watch, meaning that sometimes it's a one-on-one watch where they have an officer that sits in front of the cell, and his main concern is it would be Epstein, to make sure that the inmate does not kill themselves, and it will be New York State minimum standards is a 30-minute security ring, meaning you have to do a security tour throughout the block. But when there are situations like suicidal, they say 15 minutes security tour. But that officer sitting in front will use a logbook and log that he is in visual sight of the inmate. So regardless of, even if they didn't have him one-on-one, because from what the reports were, it said that he was taken off a suicidal watch. So he should have been in some type of step down from forensic step down facility or housing area where they probably either had a 15-minute on watch on him. So it's problematic because it was reported that the officers did not do any security rings at all. That means they didn't check. And when you do a security ring, you have to physically look in each cell and check. If the cell is empty, the cell is empty. But if someone's in the cell, you have to visually look in each cell and check on each inmate and see if you really can't. I mean, you some people say that you have to stand at the cell, and if he's in the bed, try to see like the stomach going up and down and all that. I mean, it is possible, but a lot of sometimes they just make sure that the inmate is in a position in his bed that does not look like they are killing themselves. It's no way. All right, I'm going to make this clear. It's no way a 30-minute security ring or even a 15-minute security ring can stop somebody from attempting to kill themselves, right? Because you have a 15-minute leeway.
That's more than enough time.
Right, it's more than enough time. But because of the state minimum standards, I mean, the jail has done their job. Because there's no way you could do it. There's no way.
Now, what about keeping them
officer-
under video surveillance? Can't they do that?
Well, yes. I mean, you could do that, but that's in like special housing unit. I'm not sure if he was in a special housing unit or a step down, because some cells do have video surveillance, but not all cells have it. So it depended on what housing area that Epstein was in. Now, would our state representatives and state legislators mandate that every cell should have a camera in it? Then let's look at the cost that it will cost the taxpayers.
Although how many people are known to be, as it was in this case, he had already tried to kill himself once. How many people are known suicide risk? Probably more than we think, especially if someone's never been in jail before.
Yes. Look, we are being the correction officers are probably the only law enforcement department that trains all their personnel in dealing with the mentally ill. And now we're being trained to supervise the mentally ill. Dealing with the mentally ill in New York State is very hard because it it's been a culture to close a lot of the mental health facilities throughout New York State, even under Governor Cuomo.
And get by on just medications, which a lot of people don't take.
Right. And you know, a lot of things is problematic, right? So even with the bail reform, right, a lot of times, because there are a lack of mental facilities to help the mentally ill that are on the street, they commit a crime and come to jail and get medicated and get taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So because there is bail reform now, they're not going to jail, right? They're just being put back on the street.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I support bail reform, but I also think that they need to sit down and look at some of the dynamics of the bill.
Well, yeah, like I think most people, if we were going to go there next, I just wanted to inject this because I think you're going there and I wanted your reaction to it.
Right.
A lot of people are saying, hey, you know, in fact, we have a defense attorney you may know who's a regular, and he's even a conservative Trump supporter, but boy, he loves one of the things about this bill he loves is finally the prosecution has to share discovery, and he likes the idea of people not being held in bail. He's not a hard ass at all about it, but he does think they should have left some judicial discretion in there. What about you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
See, that's sensible to me.
No, to me too. You know, and look, for years, we had the culture of lock them up, throw away the keys.
Yes.
Lock them up. But nobody actually paid attention to the amount of taxpayer dollars that's being spent. I'm a correction officer. I made a lot of money, right, of them locking people up. My pension will be A-okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we also understand we never helped the situation. We never was the Department of Correction. We were the Department of just keeping people locked up. We never corrected the district attorney's system, right? The district attorney is supposed to be for justice. But when the district attorney talks, what does he talk about? How many people they locked up?
I know.
They never talk about how many people they let go, how many people that they found out was innocent.
Hey, you're singing my song now. You know, I've been having fun. This new woman is challenging the current DA, and I'm just worried that and this has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman, but she's on TV. The last thing I want is another Janine Pirro who really just wants to go to the next step and doesn't care if people are guilty or innocent, just wants to get the numbers. I worry about that.
But that's the culture of the seat.
Yeah.
Well, that's the culture. It doesn't matter. Look, unless a district attorney is willing to change the culture of the seat, like Marilyn Mosley down in Maryland, right? That she's changing the culture of the seat. She's not prosecuting just to be prosecuting, right? She is also going after cops that have made false arrests because it's about justice. It's about justice. It's not about your stats. It's not about how many people you could lock up. Because every time we hear a bad story about bail reform, we also hear a story about a man that did 30 years in jail that didn't commit the crime.
Do you know who I'm very close with, and he's been on this show, and we'll be doing a show with him as we grow the station. Jeff Deskovic, who famously did 16 years for a murder he didn't commit, and he's doing so much. He finally did pass the bar, and now he runs his own foundation. Just a great human being. He's helping so many people. We can't have that.
Exactly.
We just can't have that. Let me ask you about being a corrections officer. I know a few people. Dennis Nardone, my radio colleague, it was one. You, General, now you do your civil rights work. You can be a tough guy when you have to be. You can call for justice as you are now. But you generally are a pretty happy, well-adjusted man in life. And what I'm saying is you've not allowed what you see in your day-to-day prison life to sully you. How do you keep that from happening? Because sometimes, frankly, the news sullies me, covering what's going on in Washington, schools. Sometimes it gets to me. How do you keep it from getting to you?
I have a life. I have a life. I always, even in my younger days, in my mid-20s, I always did other things outside of corrections. Corrections, and maybe it was a mistake because I should have took the supervisor's test and probably I would have been awarded or something by now. But I never looked at corrections as a career. I looked at it as a means for me to do other things in life.
Like start a newspaper. Yeah, okay.
Well, look, I had a security company. I had a recording studio, a newspaper. I
Cupcake shop.
Well, that's my daughter.
No, I know, but I like throwing that in because it's
exactly
because I'm a ball buster.
I did other things. I traveled the world. I did personal security for Carl Kanai, one of the longtime clothing designers, and I traveled the world with him, right? And my job was a means for me to do other things, right? It wasn't a career. Now that I look back, should I made it a career? Maybe so.
You know what? I would bet no. I would bet no, only because you've had a career. It included that and a bunch of other things, and it funded these things that help a lot of people and that now are going to help me to eat better.
Absolutely.
And you to destroy a rainforest. So.
Right. Absolutely. But I think, and that's what, and I don't, when anybody can tell you, when I worked the housing areas, I respected them as men.
Yeah, I bet.
And I used to tell them all the time, you want me to treat you like a man or you want me to treat you like an inmate? It's your choice. Because I go home either after 8 or 16 hours, I'm going home to my family, to my house, to my comfortable living, right? But while I'm here with you, you have the option, for how I'm going to treat you. It's your call. Because I could treat you like an inmate and be a hard butt on you.
Now,
or I could treat you like a man.
Now, how much? Now, again, people who haven't met you, how tall are you? About 6'2", 6'3"?
6'2".
6'2", and you are built like a football lineman, except you're leaner than they are. You're a big guy with a deep voice and a straight shooter. That's got to help you because it gives you a lot of credibility.
Well, yeah. Well, that was learned, man. I started. When I walked into there as an officer, I was just turning 21.
Oh my.
So it's something that you learn. I was blessed to have a lot of good senior officers, a lot of good role models within the jail facility and outside. That were in law enforcement to understand the job, and in that time it was a different. It was a different jail at that time, man. It was very different.
How was it different?
It was different because it was more like old time jailing. It wasn't about social work. It wasn't about.
It was like when they used to call you all screws and stuff. What was those terms?
Yeah,
screws and turnkeys and
right. And it was more physical.
Say more about that.
Yeah, it was. I've had 3 operations. I tore on both of my rotator cuffs, and I had an operation.
Wrestling with guys, wrestling with prisoners.
Yeah. It was more physical. You know why it was more physical? Because the inmates worked out more back then. They don't work out now.
Is that right? Because every time you see in the movie, they're out in the yard, and I'm saying I wouldn't mess with these guys.
When I started, they used to have weights in the jail. So the inmates used to just lift. Everybody had to be big. Officers had to be big. Inmates had to be big. The inmates were bigger than officers. They were working out. It was working out every day with weights. And that was my thing. Coming in there 190 pounds, I'm like, oh my God, I got to get big. These dudes are big. So you go and you get bigger, but then you get older, you can't get rid of the weight.
Mm-hmm. Do you have hope as someone who does? Did I lose you, Damon? He dropped. I hope his plant-based diet didn't give him a heart attack or something. Call back. Or he was, I don't know what happened to poor Damon Jones. Anyway, you're listening to Radio Westchester, and this gives us a pretty good time to share one more. There he is. to share one more it's bit of the weather with you. Actually, we'll wait till we get to the end of the interview. He is called back. Now, Damon,
Yeah,
we
I'm
were
sorry.
worried. You didn't have a heart attack from all the plants you're eating, did you?
No, my wife called, and I went to send her the voicemail, and then by mistake.
Now this. I got to go back to this because I love this stuff. Does your wife employ your plant-based diet, or does she think you're nuts?
No, she agrees.
Okay.
I mean, she's a little slow to get into it. She cut down a lot of meat. She just eats fish.
Do you see? This is how we in the press now can really do fake news. All I have to do is go to my editing app, where you called your wife. My wife is slow, and send her that. And you'll be in the garage.
What are you talking about?
You'll be in the garage of that wonderful house of yours. Damon Jones is my guest. He's the publisher of Black Westchester magazine, and I've been so anxious to get a chance to talk with him long form like this about his very interesting life and career as a newspaper man. And we were talking now about his work as a corrections officer. Do you ever, and the last thing I said to you, and then you went away, and I said I asked him the wrong thing. No, he has no hope, and he hung himself. Do you have hope that we can get people who've been to jail? I mean, a lot of people work at it. That this group Choice, where I'm on the board, they work a lot with those people. Janelle Albritton, whom you know, works with folks that have been to jail. There's a guy by the name of Sean Pecker who I've had on, who gets inmates into college, and they have like a 95% never go back to jail rate. What is your hope for people that are in prison now? What do they need that we don't get in the public?
I think they need help. I mean, I think the correction culture is changing, right? It's changing that they are putting more programs in facilities. They're putting college programs. They're putting training programs, right? But we also need to not only focus on having those programs in the jail facilities, but those same programs should be in your public schools.
Mm-hmm.
The vocational programs, carpentry, auto mechanic, these different programs. They should be in school, because if you do that, you will have less people going to jail. I mean, look, we spent so much money on housing inmates, and that's basically what we're doing, right? So, and I used to say it all the time. Instead of taking this kid that stole a cell phone, robbed a guy from a cell phone, right? Instead of taking him and putting him in county jail for a year or a year and a half, because at that time wasn't any type of bail reform, so he'll sit for 9 to 10 months without even seeing
for stealing a cell phone. That's crazy.
Exactly. So instead of remanding him to jail, why don't you remand him to Westchester Community College? It's cheaper to send him to Westchester Community College than it is to house him in Westchester County Department of Correction. And you're educating him.
So what I'm hearing is you do have hope, though, that we can change the system.
I do have hope. I have a lot of hope because that's one of the things Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, the National Black Police Association, the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, NOBLE, the Grand Council Guardians, all these different black law enforcement organizations over the years, we were always saying that the criminal justice system must change. It must have a more consciousness. It shouldn't be about just lock them up and throw away the key. And we have always said that. But somebody, some great person somewhere decided to look at the numbers and saw the money that they were spending.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But also we cannot forget the implicit bias that's in the criminal justice system, because they didn't start talking about reform until the opioid epidemic ran through the white community. They haven't treated, if they treated the opioid epidemic the same way as they treated the crack epidemic that was in the black community, we'll have 5, 6, 10,000 people locked up in jail. So maybe it's a blessing that this happened because they're looking at it differently now, and it works out for everybody.
That's interesting.
But but there's still that implicit bias because they're treating the opioid epidemic that is all throughout the white communities throughout America, right? They're sending these people to treatment when they were crack addicts, they sent them to jail.
Well, I've covered some of those drug courts, and they can be very effective. And I guess maybe that's another example of things they need to do more of. Listen, I got 12 minutes left, and I want to get on to something else, and it may well link into some of these other things. You started a newspaper. I guess now it's 7 years. It's been a while. Black Westchester magazine. I've had you on many times, but your editor in chief is with us weekly, and we've extended his time, and it's valuable time. You have covered this city, and it must sometimes it gets you as agitated as it does me because you try to do the right thing and you don't know who to believe, and we have mayor after mayor, and we've had all kinds of problems, and now we have a new mayor. How hopeful are you that Sean Patterson Howard can, she may not be able to right every wrong that ever was, but that she can get this city on its feet, A, B, solve some of the problems that seem to be endemic to that city, which involve corruption, or at least the way bills are paid, the way development is done. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about her commissioners so far? I know it's a lot in one question, but I wanted to get to that.
I'm hopeful, as I am in any new mayor, that they're able to do what they said they were going to do. But I also understand the reality and the culture of politics in Mount Vernon and how that works. The mayor cannot do it alone. Mm-hmm. She's going to have cooperation and with the city council. She's going to have a cooperation with the controller. Mm-hmm. She's going to have the proper assistance from county and state, and she's going to have the support of the people. Well, she got the support of the people because she was voted in, and she's going to have to stay away from the usual crazy politics that Mount Vernon.
What are those crazy politics?
Crazy politics is that people cannot work together.
That amazes me.
Why? They have their own agenda, and if it pops up, she has to have she has to have the wherewithal and the willingness to work through it. So, I'm hopeful because it is the only majority black-run city in Westchester, mm-hmm. and probably the state, mm-hmm. and it's a reflection on black governance and black people if we are capable, of being in leadership position and handling a lot of money.
That shouldn't be the question so much as the culture. I mean, to be fair to all of that, some of the cultural issues in your city go back to when the Italians were running it.
Yeah, I wasn't there when the Italians were running it, but mm-hmm. a lot of people said that they ran it better. So, a lady hit me in Messenger, a black woman hit me in Messenger today, said it was better when the Italians ran it. I don't know when I wasn't here when the Italians ran it, right? So I was only around when people that looked like me ran it, and it was a whole bunch of confusion, and so we say that we can do better, mm-hmm. right? And we have to do better. As far as her appointments and commissioners, the only one that I know personally is Police Commissioner Glenn Scott. And as I said on Facebook, I've known Glenn Scott for over 10 years, and he has always been a man of integrity and honor, and he knows that police department like the back of his hand.
Well, that's good. Because one of the
things I give credit where credit is due, and that was a great pick.
Now, one of the things that she said, but pardon me for interrupting her, but in the interest of time, she mentioned on this program, after she was elected, but not yet inaugurated, she said that she believed that there was criminality in the police department. And my just ears just perked up. And to say that even before you're in the job, she must know something, not that we don't, but that perhaps all those in the know in the town. Were you concerned about the police department? Do you agree with her assessment?
Well, I agree with her very well. She was Mayor Thomas's chief of staff at one point. She knows firsthand with Joe Spezio and him being a legal deputy commissioner in that position and using the police department as his personal Gestapos. Absolutely, I agree with her. My wife was attacked by the city government before because I exposed what was going on in the police department. The false trying to shut down Cupcake Cutie was another example of the criminality coming out of City Hall.
But specifically, but in the police department itself, there are bad actors in there right now as we speak. Do you believe?
Well, I think some of the suspensions under Mayor Wallace was right on point. I think she should allow, and from what I see that she is, those investigations and those suspensions to go forward. And she also needs to put her heel in the behind of the district attorney, because he has sat back for 3 years and refused to investigate many of the complaints that was brought to him. And I know personally there was a retired commissioner that brought Scarpino a stack of evidence in investigating. So, I think if part of the problem is Scarpino did not do his job.
I wonder why, because Lyndon Williams has told me on the air that he's written to the Attorney General, he's written to the governor, he's written to Scarpino, and it can't get, and no one did anything about any of these things.
Well, that's the problem with some politics, right? When did Lyndon Williams say that publicly?
Oh, it was about a year ago now.
When did these politicians see? This is one of the problems that I have with politics, right? Don't tell me behind closed doors or text me that what they're doing is wrong or whatever. Say it publicly.
Well, he did on the air a year ago.
On the air, a year ago. But you telling me that the county legislator and all these different people, they don't stand up and call us wrong and force the DA to do something, then there's a problem. Then maybe Scarpino shouldn't be the district attorney.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
But they will turn around and support him if he gets the Democratic nominee. So this is the hypocrisy in politics. This is the hypocrisy in politics that usually gets me in trouble.
Well, yeah.
See, if you're gonna listen, but it's look. We're in 2020. We have to see clearly, right? So if you're gonna say to you, and you're gonna say to all these other people that he's not doing their job, but then he gets the Democratic nomination, and then you stand there with them, then someone's a hypocrite.
I understand.
Someone's a hypocrite.
Now,
and this is the problem with politics.
Let's go on to the new deputy, the new fire commissioner. Were you surprised that she chose someone that has never been a fire commissioner, however, spent 22 years in I guess, in the military police force, et cetera, and is a good administrator?
I don't know her well. I really don't. I've heard her name. I don't know her from what I don't. I don't think I do. But I don't know her back. People said that. I mean that's her choice. Now she has to do her job. That's her choice. I would want to have someone with more experience but that is the mayor's choice, and let's hope she's able to do her job.
Okay, two more quick questions before you go.
And we will see.
You mentioned earlier about the culture and some of the people in Mount Vernon and an inability to agree. And I know AJ in his conversations with me have said there are factions in the public that he gives a hard time for not being more involved. what about that? Can she get? How do you deal with a public that itself is fractured and or not interested enough in politics to see that the right things are done? Do we need more? Go ahead.
I mean, really, it's not up to the politician, right? It's not up to the politician to educate the people, right? It's up to the core people in the community, the real stakeholders in the community, the public. The problem is not just in Mount Vernon, but communities throughout the nation. Is that the stakeholders, those people in the community, those who are trying to get the information to the community, after a while they get worn out, right? So they get worn out, and there's not a lot of people left to take their place. You're dealing with a social media, cell phone culture at this point.
And there's anger. You see a lot of anger in the duels that take place on Facebook in Mount Vernon.
Well, yeah, but you see a lot of misinformation too.
Yes, of course.
So the goal is, how do we cut through the misinformation? How do we deal with just communicating on a level of communicating information? So you might not agree with the information, but if the information is factual, then you have to then you have to deal with that information.
One last question. This is the classic wide-ranging interview for sure. Whether it was when Ernie was mayor, Clinton Young, Ernie again, Richard Thomas, or Andre Wallace, I don't think I've ever had an interview with them, or at least in some of the interviews, that their relationship with the churches and the pastors in that town didn't play a big role. How influential are the pastors? I've often had some of them say to me from time to time, well, I've got the pastors on my side. How important is that? And what is the nature of religion in that town that it counts so much?
I think the pastors should stay out of politics and preach more God.
God, I love this man.
That's what I feel about it. I have respect for a lot of the pastors in Mount Vernon, but I really think the pastors should stay out of politics and preach more God, right? Because of the fact that you have, and me and Bishop Edwards get into this argument all the time on Facebook. I always say there's 400 houses of worship. He says no, it's 3. At the end of the day, it's 4 by 4 square miles with 300 houses of worship, and the city's catching hell. My mother used to always say, it's not about how many pastors you have in the city. It's about their connection to the God that they praise to.
Wow.
So we have to really get the pastors out of politics and get the pastors back into saving the people, because the people need economic development, right? The people need a better educational system, right? The people need better job training and all that. We need to get the pastors to get on the pulpit and push a lot of that stuff, because that's what we need. Stay out of the politics. And then we see more pastors getting jobs in City Hall, and instead of raising the life and raising the love and raising the spirituality of the people. So I think that culture is a very problematic in moving forward in Mount Vernon. And I say it again, I love them all. I have respect for them all, but when something's not working right year after year after year after year, we have to make the necessary.
Damon Jones, I knew I asked a good question at the end, and I could feel your pause. You were like a guy, what? Hey, listen, I really have appreciated this. Now, usually I would say we got to go and get a beer one of these days, but you know what? You and I got to go out and get some spinach salad soon.
Definitely.
My best to your wife and family. I really appreciate this hour. We have to do this again soon. Damon Jones, the publisher of Black Westchester Magazine, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, sir. All righty, that slams the lid on things. That was worth going an extra few minutes for. All righty. Let's take a look at where we are at. This segment, this hour has been brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. A lot of guests today, of course. We'll go in reverse. We want to thank Damon Jones, Victor Sternberg, Steve Callis, Jake, great job again. Look forward to his picks. Vince Russo, really, and of course we had our good buddy come in, the aforementioned Lorraine Carl. And I know, and we got kind of tied up. Anthony was trying to reach us today. We will give him a buzz off air and see if everything is okay there and see if we can get him involved. Next week, we have a very special schedule. We'll announce it on Facebook. We're going to be doing some work here at the studio and meeting with some sponsors and investors, etc. So it should be an interesting week for us. But we will see you on Monday at 6 o'clock. This is Radio Westchester, and a special thanks to our friends at Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Orchard Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic Fine Cigars, located at on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Have a great day, folks.